Hey, it's John Carlos, and I'm here with special guest and friend.
Eddie.
That's his cue, Eddie. Uh, Eddie and we did a podcast or
Yeah.
a YouTube video, whatever you want to call it, because it's not available on any audio thing, but you can still listen to it. But yeah, we sat on our butts and talked Chucky movies.
Actually did two podcasts.
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're back talking
Yeah.
about something I'm looking forward to because I haven't really. I geeked out with certain friends that I saw these movies with, the Paranormal Activity franchise, but you and
Totally.
I have never really engaged that much with these. So this is
Mm,
like we spent the last part of several years going Chucky this and Chucky that, but
yeah.
I got triggered because you posted your like rankings of them on Instagram. And
Like over a month ago, yeah.
yeah, and I remember, I don't know if it's changed, but I just remember like the marked ones was so high up that I like got triggered, and I'm like, oh, God, I want to discuss this with you.
Oh, cool.
So
Yes.
that's how we're here today. Um,
Yeah.
I'm thinking we might just kind of go chronologically with each movie because I like to reminisce and be wistful about my experiences watching them.
Well, why don't you dive into your experience with the first one?
Well, the first one, oh man, I mean, the thing about the first one, I don't know. It's one of those cases. I know some people really got into it, like I did, and some of the people I knew, and then some people, that thing that happens when like, remember when the Matrix first came out, and then like 3 months later, people were like, "Well, I saw the Matrix, wasn't that big fucking of a deal, it wasn't that good." It's like, well, you've spent 3 months listening to how awesome it is.
Right.
I know there's a lot of people like Paranormal Activity would shit. I'm like,
Hmm.
well, if you're catching on to the phenomenon after the fact, but I remember not like I was there from the beginning, like some hipster of movies, but like I
Oh,
do
of course not.
when it first was becoming a thing. You know, it they filmed it, they bootlegs of it circulated.
Yeah.
Like it ended up in Spielberg's hands, who came up with the new
Hmm.
ending. Paramount released it with like the Paramount DreamWorks thing. Um,
Yeah.
I remember I was dating a girl and she was living with a guy at the time, and he was like, "Oh my God, have you seen this movie?" And I'm like, "No, but I've been hearing the buzz and I know the story behind it, and I want to go see it in the theater." And he's like, "But it's been online for like a year. You can watch it. Let's just watch it." I'm like, "No, maybe later, but I want to see this in a theater." Anyway, long story short, saw it in the theater. It was great. It did that thing that that two also had, and then like at least in a theater, and then the third one has when it'll go like night two, you know, and you go night three, and you go, and then by night five, the whole audience is going, and then by night seven, you can hear like, oh
I
fuck.
always feel, yeah, I always feel the tight recline, like people just like tensing up, going, "Oh, it's another night." No.
There's audible like, it's like, oh, I want to think of it's such a stupid reference, but in Goonies, when the mom
Yes.
walks in and they've busted the statue with the penis,
Yeah.
and Chuck is like, oh shit, what? You're having a perfectly nice time. Then night eight, oh shit, what? Oh no.
I
So
actually, yeah, yeah. I actually enjoy the fact that, particularly with this movie, the daytime eventually doesn't become much safer either. Um,
yes,
there's
especially with
plenty
some
that
of the
happens in the
sequels.
day that, yeah.
Anyway, long story short, right after we saw it that night, we went back and we watched it again on my friend's laptop and
Oh,
just really
wow.
analyzing, like, oh, look at the door, look at the door, fuck, 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 fuck. And the movie still works on a laptop.
Yeah.
2 in the morning, just three of you hanging out on a bed going, oh shit, oh shit.
Hmm.
Also, it had a famously alternate ending when they like, and the bootleg was the original ending, not
Hmm.
Spielberg's, throwing a thing.
There are actually three that
There's
I've
three,
seen.
and then
Yeah.
the Blu-ray has an alternate ending, and I think that one sucks. Where
No.
she slits her throat.
The original you can find on YouTube. You can actually play them all
Yeah, you
simultaneously on
can.
one link I followed.
The original one's eerie, but I get Spielberg's intent to like, hey, let's franchise this. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I mean, to just kind of like tighten it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Although it did, the art house freak in me, I really appreciated the because you just wait longer, and the amount of time that you sit. So much of the scares in this are, it's that slow burn, it's that putting yourself in the heads of the people who are living in the house, predominantly Katie, because if you're
Oh,
identifying
because
with Micah,
fuck Mika.
yeah,
Mika's a prick. Mika's the
fuck
worst.
you. Mika But it was interesting, actually. I just rewatched mine because also watching it during the day, I didn't feel any safer, and also because so much of it is about like emotional turmoil. It even I feel like even if you aren't scared by it, there's something engrossing about it that almost made me feel ill. Um, and I was so with Katie, like two moments in particular where she broke down. I think one is after the fight with Mika when he basically tells her, "You brought this into the house and I didn't," and
Right.
she's just crying and apologizing. I was like, "Oh my god!" And I think the other one was after
He brings
Dr.
the Ouija board
Oh well, fuck yeah!
because
I
she
mean,
appropriately scolds him over that.
yes, but still kind of going really easy on him. I thought she was always so compassionate, always coming from a place of patience. And even from the beginning, when she's just like, "I understand you've got the camera, you didn't grow up with this, so this must be really, really exciting for you." She's trying
Yeah.
to kind of share his perspective. It takes her breaking down after multiple nights of being horrified by something for him to finally kind of see things through her eyes. And by then, of course, it's too late. Oh, should we did spoilers, everybody?
Oh yes. If you're watching this, but yeah, we should have put something up.
Yeah. Well, you can put it in the title anyway.
I'm
But
not. I,
yeah,
I obviously from the minute we're going, even without having any special trauma, I'm automatically with her,
yeah.
and I'm just surprised she puts up with Mika as much as she does because I'm already not having it 20, 30 minutes into the movie, and she's living with this.
Well, we'll talk about it more when we get in deeper into the franchise because I actually have. I feel like later on they kind of answer the riddle for me why she would be so patient with somebody. Hi, Kitty. Des is musing and bringing me toys. I'm right here. Come here. She's like 6 feet away from me. She's Corona safe. Um,
Well, speaking of Mika and Katie, one of the
yeah,
biggest strengths of this movie, and I can't praise this enough. When this first came out, was that I was. It's one thing when actors can bring truth to a part, but also just
yeah,
a good casting where I believe that these people are real people. And when you're making something that's shot handheld and it's
hmm
supposed to be real,
yeah,
they did an excellent job casting people who don't look like actors. Like, I feel like I've known a Katie and I've known a Mika,
yeah,
both in their personality and even just in the way they look. Like there's nothing Hollywoody about them at all. Neither one of
yeah.
them looks like a CW star.
hmm
They feel so incredibly genuine, which
They feel
will
like your neighbors or your coworkers.
yeah, like the
Yeah,
casting of them and then what they deliver to me sells everything. And in fact,
yeah.
it's to me one of the benchmarks for a majority of the franchise because a lot
Right.
of people managed to continue doing that for a pretty
Sure.
like I
Um,
totally believe like I just every movie I watch I'm like I know a Christie. Got it.
yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah,
I know who this is. I don't feel like I'm watching an actor. I don't feel like I'm watching a character, and that's really
yeah.
impressive. Um,
Absolutely. Another thing that impresses me is I think one of the hooks for me from the beginning was the fact that it kind of honors the values. I mean, I'm a horror fan. I have been for a long time. Since, single digits when I was watching movies, I was way too young to be watching. But everything that I grew up watching in the 80s and even the old like Universal Legacy movies and whatever, the values that I've accrued from watching them, I made a list because I feel like this one kind of hits all of them. Like basically, like I mean, one could basically say they're just ways to not be a dick, but usually when we talked about it with the Chucky franchise too. Those moments where somebody knows or believes something is going on, and nobody will believe them,
hmm.
and that's what this movie does. Except it's just two people, one person who believes and one person who doesn't, but so the audience
What
is encouraged to kind of like flex their their compassion, and just like I wrote down, have an open mind when people discuss issues they're experiencing, practice caution around things you don't know about, admit when you're in over your head and ask for help, evaluate how much trust people are capable of handling when you invest in them, and respect others' boundaries. One thing Mika does not do at all, it's
No.
not just the Ouija board, it is like everything. He pushes against everything she wants to do, even when she has her girlfriend there as a soundboard to kind of confirm her feelings and say and tell Mika to his face, you really shouldn't be doing this. He's like, yeah, whatever. And he just walks away like this douchey 13-year-old. But that actually brought me to the other strength. I don't really have any weaknesses. I don't really have any complaints about this movie. I think it's super solid. So the other big strength for me was kind of the archetypal roles that they're playing. And when I tried to look at it as good versus evil, because that's very it's very archetypal. But I also thought like innocence versus malice.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to think of Katie as innocent because she's being victimized the whole movie by both he doesn't have a name yet, but the demon, and by Mika. And she's a party who's done absolutely nothing to deserve this level of abuse. I don't know what you'd have to do to deserve abuse. But it made her very girlish to me. There's even one shot, I forget after which traumatic event it was, but it's in the bedroom. He just kind of picks up the camera from its famous shot and just focuses on her, and she's standing there with her feet kind of turned inward, and she looks like a little girl. She looks very, very vulnerable, and you feel like you're looking at the same girl who was scared all those years ago and periodically since then. The thing about Mika's innocence, I feel like his is more attributed to inexperience, which she cites. He reminded me of, in The Lost World, when the compies come up to that one actor from Fargo. I can't remember his name right now.
Stormare? I don't know how to say his last name.
Sure, the big guy.
Yeah. Peter Stormare.
The compies come over and he's looking at them and he just kind of talks about how, wow, it's not even afraid of me. And whoever he's talking to says like, well, they have no wereason to fear man. We're the first people who have ever been on this island. And then he gets this like electroshock. Yeah, this taser. And he tases it and he says, now they do. And I'm like, you're a fuckwad. But I feel like Mika is the compy. He hasn't been tased. He hasn't been tased yet.
And then he gets one good tasing.
Yeah. And then once he gets the tasing, it's too late.
Yeah.
But so there is a level of innocence that I could recognize in him because it's the level of inexperience and the fact that he hasn't been tased yet. And then there's the demon, which is the other side, which is the malevolence and the terrorizing. So those are like incredibly kind of like almost epic roles that they're occupying, and yet it's this small contained movie inside of a house, but it does feel like it's all part of something larger. And I mean everything, even like I just talked about like figuratively what it could mean on a grander scale, like just as we're perceiving it, but also these lives, like you said, these lives do feel authentic. They do feel accessible. They do feel like this could be your neighbors. This could be your sister.
I've had friends who dated a Mika, where even in her plight, this scenario is still all about him. Even though we've talked a lot about how this affects her and how she feels about it, he continues to antagonize it for his sake, to the point where he can play the bullshit semantics game where she's like, I told you not to. He's like, well, you didn't tell me. I said I wouldn't buy a Ouija board. I didn't say I wouldn't get one. The fact that he still thinks that's a valid argument and he knows he's in trouble, he's still only thinking about himself.
Yeah.
Which I just, I think it's been, everybody hates Mika. That's all I'm getting at. I think in the end.
Nobody's team Mika after this movie.
No. I remember one thing that I think has gotten lost in the public consciousness, but felt fresh in the franchise is we were having Saw 1, Saw 2, Saw 3, Saw 4 every Halloween. And then I think when Saw 7 came out, 6 or 7, this is also came out. And that's when and then this became the Halloween movie for the next 4 Octobers.
Right.
But there was something really fresh about, it's just these people sleeping and a camera in their bed. And every once in a while you find a horror movie that has something new or at least something fresh to say.
Yeah.
And after I don't poo-poo the horror franchise for going so torture porny in the 2000s the way other people do. I do.
No.
There's a lot of horror movies that I liked,
Sure.
um, but it was the biggest breath of fresh air when a movie came out with something as simple as you don't know what happens when you're asleep at night,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna make a movie about how vulnerable you are just laying in your bed for hours.
Sure.
That felt exciting, and
Yeah.
and especially the first movie where that's pretty much if you had to give the premise of, I mean, we're talking about themes of malice versus not, but also just the simple premise of your vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and
At
not even
home,
not,
like
not
the
even
one place
just
you're
not even
supposed to be
just the
safe.
door moving, but also how someone can stand over you for 4 hours if they're really quiet.
Yeah.
Just I mean, that's eerie. People in the theater would just be like, "What the fuck?"
Mm-hmm.
All that first night, and she's just sort of. Um,
Well, and that's why I think it gets back to the basics. Like I don't poo-poo the torture porn era either per se. I've seen all the Saws. Some I like better than others.
I enjoy
But
the hostels.
yeah, yeah. Particularly two. It was like a roller
Yeah,
coaster.
I like two too.
More about that later.
But this
But
is
what
a
I like,
very
what
relatable concept. Even if you're not in
and
this relationship, everyone goes to bed at night.
and how impressive is it that they here, I mean, the torture porn was all about like, oh, look, you can see the biology of all this happening in this, and you wince and whatever it has whatever effect it has, and that's fine. But this, I care so much about Katie that when she finally reveals the bite, I'm looking at it the way I would look at a friend, the way I would see like a friend showing me some wound they have, and I know how they got it, and it was like like they were victimized, like it was aggressively put upon them. And when she shows it, I also, as I don't think about the bite, I don't sit there and go like, wow, that's a great makeup, look at that bite, even though I think it works. What I think about is her face, the expression on her face when she's laying there and curled up in a ball, and she just gets up and slowly he's like, I want to see your bite, and she's like, okay, she's just
Hmm.
complying, and she just lifts it up to show off, and he even touches her, like she's all red and irritated, and he even touches her. She's like, ah, and I'm like, oh my god, like you've got me, and you didn't need to do hours and hours of makeup
Right.
to do it. It feels like true filmmaking in a way that oftentimes could have been done, a century ago. Um,
Can I tell
so, and
you
I,
what part
yeah,
scares me the most?
which
Just
one?
gives me just a bad feeling.
Yeah.
Again, it's so simple. It's just an audio effect, but it's the daytime before the final night,
Mm.
and after she's been bit, you could tell she's already not herself anymore. And she's like, "It's all right, Mika. I think everything's gonna be
Oh,
just fine now." And it's like,
yes.
that
That.
I can watch The Exorcist and watch things spinning and ghosts go boo, but just that voice modulation and her performance makes my skin crawl because I feel
Yeah.
it's not just I feel menace. I feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to be in that room. I just
Because but up until then, you don't really know what's happening to her when she's like standing up and everything. You don't know if she's being possessed. You don't know if
right.
she's sleepwalking. And when she's out, when he's talking to her, and she's like, you don't know what exactly he's dealing with. How much of Katie is there? She doesn't remember any of it the next day. So,
Mm,
but it's more of a question mark. But that moment, you finally know it ain't her.
yeah,
And also, she's been pleading with him. I don't know how many times she says please in this movie. I'd say make a drinking game out of it, but it's probably just going to really depress you.
I rewatched all these very recently. I saw them all in theaters, and then after each one came out, I watched them again.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't just binged them all in a row, and I forgot
Mm.
just how much the first movie is her being like, "Mika, come on, fucking
Yeah,
don't," and then I'm going like, like two-thirds of
yeah,
the movie is just her pleading with him to not be a prick
yeah.
and have some
And him
understanding.
just kind of, I mean, oh my gosh.
Another
But
fun thing I like about this movie is
yeah,
there are no dumb jump scares in this one. I kind of catalog just how much over the course of the movies
yeah,
they start getting to cheaper jump scares. But even
yeah,
even a loud thud in the middle of the night is still just people sleeping, and then boom, a loud noise, and it's treated the way just like a loud noise would surprise you. Same thing with
right.
someone running into the room really quick, but at no point does someone open the fridge and the cat jumps out.
Yeah, no, it's a jump scare with context or
Well, there
with
are
impact.
there are
As long as it
shocks.
jumps,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
As long as a jump scare has impact, I'm all for it.
yeah,
If
I'm all
it's
for jump scares
just
when they're organic and it's real, and that's one of the
yeah.
things I really appreciate about James Wan and what he did with Insidious and The Conjuring was like every jump scare really is a hag going rah
Oh
instead of
God,
a
yeah.
loud phone or a flock of birds or a cat or someone standing behind the fridge going, "Hey, there's a phone call for you." You know,
Or
like
somebody shutting a medicine cabinet, and there's someone there who wasn't there. It's like,
exactly. And sometimes it's just like, "Oh, the door was loud," you know,
yeah,
which does happen in the third movie, by the way. But that first movie, even when things are loud, they're not dumb. Um,
yeah,
and then also just a little thing that I like is that the first movie, as far as I remember sitting in the theater, like there were no credits. It was just sort of like, it's over. And I think
yeah.
after like 2 or 3 minutes, some credits rolled, but you just sit there in the silence. And I think
Hmm.
eventually, I think they even tried to stick with that for a few of the sequels. But I remember by the time I saw like 5 or 6, like, no, the credits are rolling. And I'm like, it's not the same.
They gave up by the third movie. The second one, they kind of kept it going, even though everybody knew it was a movie by then.
Yeah.
They even hired an actress who everyone had seen in a lot of other things to play Christy. But I liked that. I still liked that they were keeping the feeling that we were that we were showing you actual footage because it unlocked something in you. Because even with
What?
this first movie, when I was rewatching it, I was like, oh, I'm getting I was associating it with Blair Witch, and I'm sure people older than me would associate it with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original one, because that was presented like it was, like based on something that actually happened, and people watched it like it was a documentary. Like that's how
Yeah.
susceptible people were back in the '70s.
Wait,
But it worked because
Christy was an established actress? Because I didn't know this.
yeah, I had seen her in at least 2 or 3 things before then.
See, I hadn't, and to me that
Oh,
really
okay.
worked for this movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
But
I thought so too.
one of the little things that is fun about the first few movies, and the first one again wasn't trying for anything. The first one cost a few $1,000, and Oren Pelly, like I think he shot it in his house or he shot it in the producer's house.
Yeah, can't
But
remember which. Yeah,
but she mentions just like, oh yeah, this thing used to haunt me and my sister. It used to be at the foot of our bed, and it used to bother me more than her.
yeah.
I watched the movie, once in theaters and once on my friend's laptop. Cut to a year later, I forgot she even mentioned her sister.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the theater for, first of all, say what you want about the ups or downs of two, but the first 15 minutes of two are masterfully constructed as far as pulling a good reaction of the audience because
Yeah.
you're told it's Paranormal Activity 2.
Yeah.
You don't really have a context for what's happening.
Yeah.
Um, and even the beginning doesn't give you the year. So you don't even know where in time you are yet.
Yeah.
So when they cut to the reveal of Katie, like everyone in the
I'm
theater
like,
was like, "What?
shit.
What?"
Yeah. We're like,
And
oh my God, she's possessed.
right.
Yeah.
And then when they ask her, "Hey, where's Mika?" And she's like, "Oh, Mika couldn't make it."
Yeah. And there's even that section where she's holding the baby and the baby's just kind of mesmerized by her. Hunter's just this newborn looking at her. And she's like, look at the way he's looking at me. And you're like, because you're evil. There's a demon
If you want to
inside.
read
She's
into it
not.
that way, because as we find out, like 2 scenes later, when Mika shows
Yeah.
up, and everyone in the theater is like, "What?" And at that point,
Yeah.
because they put up a card that
Yeah.
explains to you, this is like 40 days before Mika died.
Yeah.
Watching it this time, aside from the opening that just says Carlsbad, California, like the very next thing gives you like a month and a date. Because I know the first two are like 2016. I think the first one was like September and October. This one's like August
2006. Yeah.
2006. Yeah.
August 2006. Yeah.
So I feel like a dummy now because had I been paying attention by the dates, the clues are there to tell you this is a prequel before they introduce Mika.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just
But,
tuned.
I mean, I feel like because the first one was so effective and so notoriously so, um, I feel like even though the horror fan in me, anytime I see Katie in any of these other movies, full grown Katie especially, my heart just kind of starts beating a little faster, like, oh, or I mean, warmer. Like I was kind of like, oh, Katie's here. It's Paranormal Activity. Oh, gee.
I mean, and
And
she ends up showing up in 5 of the 6 of them.
yeah, but uh, the first time seeing it when I didn't know what I was getting myself into, um, I just knew it was her sister, and then I see her. Something I don't know why. Everybody did believe this is a continuation. This is, I guess, because it's Paranormal Activity 2. It wasn't pushed as like a prequel, or nobody knew about the
They didn't
framing
sell it as a prequel
device.
at all.
No, not at all. So we just kind of figured this picks up where the last one left off. She probably doesn't know that her sister, blah blah blah. blah. I mean, we told ourselves our own story, and then the second we see her, our immediate reaction is going to be shocked, because the last time we saw her, she was leaping over
Right.
Mika toward the camera with a demon face. But
And this franchise is tricky because not till the 4th one do we actually find out what the hell happened after that, because the 3rd one goes even further back. It's interesting. The first 3
yeah,
go so far back. I've just never seen franchises go prequel and then prequel
yeah,
and then sequel.
yeah.
But it was interesting
But this
also
one,
because also all the tracks are laid, because the first one they mention her sister. That's
uh,
where our sequel goes, and then in this one they go, well, because like you don't want to end up like Mom. What happened when we were kids with Mom? You go, oh,
yeah.
so
Everything she says. Well, I mean, because this is
it's,
where we really get to build on the lore. Like this is where, and this is
mhm.
one thing this is one huge strength that I feel the second one
that's
has.
that's what hooked me for this one.
Yeah,
That really
and
carried the charm of it for me is the mythology this one plays with.
yeah, absolutely, and the fact that it expands upon it, because I didn't realize how little we get actually in the first one. I kind of forget when we find out what we find out, and because I forget that, sometimes I forget what we find out. And watching them this time around, it was just kind of like, oh wait, that those things don't add up, which we'll get to. But in this movie, I can't recall anything, hearing anything, taking it down and going like, that doesn't really add up for me. It actually, this is where building lore can sometimes be more gratifying than paying it off if it's not in the same hands, one movie after the other. Sometimes maybe it could even be in the same hands, and it's still, things are out of your control because movies aren't made by one single person. Um, but there were also things that just, even beyond the lore from the first movie, things that propelled this story forward that I liked a lot. Like one thing that I loved was solving the riddle of, well, why is this family going to be different? I mean, aside from the fact that there's more of them, I love the fact that Allie is essentially a detective, and a kind of companion for Christy.
Mhm.
Um,
And so refreshing compared to the first one, where it felt like Katie had
was all
he
alone.
they reached
Yeah.
out to this one psychic, and
Mm-hmm.
she has a friend
Dr.
that would come
Fredericks, yeah.
over. There's so much communication between her and Christy in this movie that it makes me. There is a bit of a, I don't want to say like a retcon or a bad continuity, but if so much is happening to Katie in the first movie, I'm surprised she didn't call Christy. Obviously, that wasn't an idea they had back then.
Yeah, me too. Although, I mean, obviously, because the movies weren't made, that
Correct.
movie wasn't made with a sequel in mind. But it kind of makes sense. I wonder, like, if the person you share the trauma with is going to be the first person you go to all the time, especially when Katie's response is so vehemently like, you need to stop talking about this. You need to
Yeah.
forget about it. You need to just walk away. Like, you need a fresh party who's actually inquisitive, who actually will give you the freedom to share that. So I feel like that wasn't really a retcon. Because also Katie, I wondered if they could go back and know the path that the movies were going to take in the first one, if Katie should have been talking to her sister instead of a friend all of those times,
Right.
or at least once. But I mean, it didn't really bother me, because
No, I
I
mean,
like Allie, and because also Allie's curiosity. This is a big thing with me. The reason why she was excited about it at first in a way that didn't irritate me or make me upset was, she's Christy isn't her mother; she's her stepmother. Her mother's passed away, and she says to, is it Danny, the dad, the
I
horrible
think
father,
so. Yeah.
Danny or David? I always get those names mixed up. She says to him, "What if it's mom? What if
Right.
mom is trying to contact us?" And I had already lost a parent at that point, so when she said it, it hit me. I was just kind of like, oh my god, Yeah, and also she's young, you know, of course she's gonna, I mean, it made perfect sense to me that she was going to be open to it and that she was going to want to find out more at that point. And I like that we didn't write it out. There wasn't any time where she went on kind of like irrationally insisting it was her mother. Like when the tide turns and it's clear that it's not her mother, against she doesn't fight for her belief anymore. She's just kind of like taking things as they come and adjusting her perception and trying to be as much of an ally to Christy as she can, because Christy at this point can't be a detective, because one thing I love about that this actress does as she's playing her is I get this strong sense of like a repressed trauma victim.
Mm-hmm.
She's the fact that she doesn't remember it. I never really buy that. Even in the old movies, anytime usually a girl goes through something and everybody insists at the end, oh, she doesn't ever remember it. It's like, no, you're gonna fucking remember it. We
Well,
can
and she
talk more
has
about that.
vague memories.
But yeah, but just the
But the
way.
implication, yeah, I can hand wave it because the implication by the time you get to the sixth one is that minds have been wiped,
Well,
memories have been repressed, and
well, but I mean,
witchcraft
even
has been done.
but also we don't know we're going there at in
Right.
the second movie. So she's playing it like
Sure.
somebody. Which I love is like she's in a familiar situation and she doesn't know why. The way she is in Hunter's room feels like cell memory to me. Like things are like memories are fighting to
Hmm.
resurface, but they can't quite. But she just knows I've been here before, and it's just in her body language. It's silent,
Well,
and
she's far more vocal about it in this movie too. So it's
yeah,
in the text for her to play.
right,
So
absolutely,
that's not her reaching for something that we didn't know about. I'm glad you mentioned the
yeah.
baby because that was one of the other things I liked about this movie was it continued with its own, I don't want to call it original premise, but for the first two, it always felt like we have a general in, and this one seemed to be like, well, a lot of people have babies. Like,
Yeah.
even with your baby monitor, do you really think your kid's gonna be safe in that room all the time? Like, it was to me an added layer when now it's fucking with its mobile, or you see it picking the baby up and going over. Like, I'm not even
Mm.
maternal. I don't even really like kids that much. Um, but I still, there's something in me that thinks the
Yeah.
way a parent does. Like, you're coming after a child,
But I also
even
I
though,
am a pet owner, and Abby is I watch Abby guarding little Hunter, and I'm like, you're
oh,
such a good dog.
um,
You're the best dog. I
uh, I have a
just
hard time watching the scene where Abby's
no,
barking and
yeah.
then gets pulled out of frame, and you're,
Oh God, horrible.
you
And then
know,
when they just carry her limp
yeah,
body out and everything, and
you can you
Allie's
can
freaking out.
you can mess with humans and children. Two crosses a line.
Yeah,
Two messes
it
with a
certainly
dog.
does. I actually respond more to that than I do something that, in a lot of discussions with people about this, because I'll talk about one weakness for me with this movie, even though it did scare me a great deal when I saw it in the theaters. I saw it with some people. I thought we were all going to go grab like a late dinner afterwards and talk about it and kind of like decompress, and that didn't end up happening. So I drove myself home from the movie theater. I think it was off in Pasadena, and I'm in the Valley, and I get home and it was raining. And did I ever tell you the story? The entire ceiling over my dining room table, about an hour into my being home, collapsed and fell.
No.
Um, I was already okay. I'm just gonna ride this out, and then, and
Yeah,
I was like,
that's not just like the phone rings and you.
no. And it was completely unrelated. Apparently, we had a leak in the ceiling. There was water damage, water damage, water damage. It had been raining consistently all that October. And so by the time I got home, I was there in time just to watch it crash down. And so I always remember that. The thing is, I was never more scared that first night seeing it. On subsequent viewings, I have to say, I love what they do, how they handle it. I love the story and it interests me. That's enough to keep me on board and not turn me against the movie, but it doesn't really, it unsettles me. After I watched it again last night, and I was a little cautious, but people were going on about how much scarier the pull in the second one is when she gets pulled up staircase rather than, and I don't mean up this, I mean like off
Yeah, yeah.
the staircase in midair than the first one. The first one was always so much scarier to me because number one, no dramatic sting or anything. It's just room sounds in a
Yeah.
room. And because it's something that could happen. I can imagine how scared I'd be if I just woke up and my leg was wandering out the door and then I hit the floor and I'm trying to stop. But it's not even doing it in a malicious way to scare me. It's just kind of like grabbing. It's just kind of taking
Mhm.
me like it's not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
That in the first movie scared the crap out of me, still scares me. In the second movie, I have a problem understanding where the demon is. Is he flying and that's why she's up in the air? Is he just that big because he never was before? It just the plausibility just gets a little, it's not enough to sour me on the whole movie, but it just, things like that make me less scared and just make me think like it feels more like I'm reading a really good like comic book or or watching a really good sequel.
I will admit the newest time I watched it was the least it's had a scare effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but pulling her down the stairs though, what sells me on that moment is her,
Sure. Yeah.
because she's 110% committed to no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and one little thing I still don't totally understand is, after the break-in,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I just love the fact that the movie starts with them coming home with Hunter,
Yeah.
and then it cuts to, after about 10 minutes, there was a break-in, like, here, put in a tape. Well, I can't find a new one. I'm just going to put in this one. So the
Yeah.
movie organically starts off with footage that's already shot that you would shoot
Yes.
when a baby is coming home. It never feels artificial. This is baby arriving in the house, and we're going to
Yeah.
show you the house.
Yeah.
It's really clever that they can set up the movie while also making it feel like this would have been filmed.
And then introduce the security cameras to kind of, so again, solve the riddle of like, well, how
Correct.
are we going to justify them filming this much? So and
Security
instead
cams
of
is a
just
great
like
choice.
give it, yeah, even though the husband in this is largely kind of like a de facto Mika, because he's useless. And my sister and I always call guys when they reach this stage in the movie of ineptitude, we call them Johnny Fuck Up. So he's a Johnny Fuck Up.
I mean, he finally comes to it, but it takes a while to be like, here's
Yeah,
the
same thing
evidence,
with
look.
Mika.
But he instantly
Yes.
takes action. No, but after the break-in, and they're searching
Mm-hmm.
downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they have to. They don't mention the videotapes in the second one, but then in the third one, like, quick, we need to make sure we shoot a scene that the tapes were taken, even though the
Right.
only thing that was mentioned in the second movie is the necklace was taken, which never comes
Yeah.
back. And I was always waiting for the necklace to play into something. To me,
There were a few things that I
the
waited for,
necklace
yeah.
is what you take when you want to, like, give the demon to Katie, but it's already got taken. I don't understand. But when they're in the basement, there's like a puddle. And they're
Hmm.
like, "What's that puddle? Did Allie do that? Not Allie. What's the dog's name?
Abby. Abby.
Abby. But the daughter's name is Allie. That's
I
confusing.
know. There's your
Anyway,
criticism
it's not like a thing that goes. It's not a mistake the movie did. But I always just wondered if, like, the cult was down there and they're like, pour the evil water,
Yeah.
because the demon is always trying. The demons. There's a lot of the basement doors open. The dog is barking at the basement. It drags
Yeah.
Christy into the basement. The climax is in the basement. There's something about. But I always want to know more. Like, what was the deal with that puddle?
Yeah, well, I mean, my imagination always goes, to the gutter. I just think like, well, it's a coven, and maybe they need. I mean, I think like sacrifices in human bodily fluids, and maybe one of them just wet the floor just to kind of like, I don't know,
Ooh,
like ceremoniously like mark territory or something, so they could hold dominion over the house. Like there's the stuff that you don't see is just as effective, sometimes even more effective than the stuff you do see, particularly as we move on. Like okay. Can I move on to Paranormal 3?
yes, please.
Awesome. Paranormal
I'm
3,
ready.
this is the first one where I really remember the trailer. And the first
And
time
I
there
want
was
to
a
talk about the
gross
trailer.
inconsistency. Yeah. With a gross inconsistency with what it was advertised as and then what we ended up getting, like the Bloody Mary scene, which I was anxious to see. I was like, "Ooh, Bloody Mary, how does that figure into all this?" And the fire that we got to see in the distance that she mentioned in the first movie.
Because in at this point I'm invested in the universe, the mythology. So when they talk
Yes.
about the house fire when we were kids, and the trailer showed the fire, I was like, let's do this. We're
Yeah.
gonna learn things. And then there's like a therapist or someone who's visiting the house that like in the trailer, like he gets pulled away. That's
Mm-hmm.
not in the movie at all.
No, no.
Bloody Mary scene's
And
totally different. And then yeah, the shots of the house. I remember initially I wasn't disappointed because I really liked the ride we took. But I'm
yeah.
just going like, huh? Because this was not. I can't help but wonder how much of that was just meant to throw us off, or how much of it was meant to is a victim of reshoots. Because
Well,
I'll tell you,
yeah.
I love the last 15 minutes of this movie.
Oh, really?
Love it. Like,
Okay.
this is the first time I realized like this might all have been a reshoot,
Yeah.
or
Or something.
this
Yeah.
movie might have ended with a house fire and some other shenanigans. I remember the mom running down a hall and getting yanked. That isn't in there, but I
Yeah, yeah,
realized like
yeah.
how because one of the things that made me realize it might be part of a reshoot is the mom, and I don't remember her name in this movie because the names are hard.
Lois?
There you go.
Grandma Lois?
Lois spends a lot of time in this movie in the dark, and
Mhm.
then when I think it's boyfriend. I don't know if they're married in this movie or not, but they've only
I
been together for a
think,
few months.
yeah, Dennis
Yeah,
and Julie.
he says at the
Yeah.
birthday party that he's only been there for like 8 months or something, but
Right.
by the time he shows her, she does not believe him and continues to
Yeah.
not believe him for a few scenes.
Yeah.
The jump in her belief is pretty drastic,
Yeah.
and I can't help but wonder if that was part of the reshoots. However, I don't care if it was part of it. It was a reshot thing because one of the things I love about this movie is the last act breaks the formula considerably and gives me something fresh and new. We're
Right.
no longer just locked in a house with our security things and wondering what's happening at night, what the kids are doing at night. We now are in a attack scenario.
Right.
We are live with them, cameras being held, things are coming. Like we are in a more traditional found footage climax,
Yeah. And the fact
and it
that
works because I mean, not to get too
yeah.
specific, but we get to their wandering grandma's house, and he goes to the garage and turns on the light, and there's people in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even before then,
Oh,
when Toby, this is the first time we get introduced to Toby as the demon, pulls Katie into
yeah, I
that
jumped all the way
that
to
little
the ending. Sorry, but I mean,
yeah, no, it's okay,
most
but like
effective part of the movie for me.
this will bring me back to my strengths for the movie. Little Christy like makes that deal, saying like, okay, fine, I'll do it, or whatever she
Oh
says,
yeah,
and you know that she's basically offering up Dennis, her surrogate father, maybe stepfather. I don't remember if they're married or not, but what? So I spend the rest of that time like when she's just kind of looking at that, what was it, a unicorn or some kind of horse-like painting when they get into Grandma Lois's house at the very end, and he comes over and he starts talking to Christy, trying to get her like, hey, because she's off by herself, she's been through an ordeal, wants to make sure she's okay. He's a good guy, he wants to be a good dad or a good surrogate dad, and she doesn't speak to him. She just kind of moves away from the painting and just goes into another room. And I think it's because of the guilt that she feels, but she knows that there was this kind of like, it's you or my sister. Naturally, I'm going to choose my sister. But one thing that leads me to the strengths of this movie, because I love Little Christy. I actually love the casting. I love the fact that their mom she's got like grown up Katie's eyes, and she's got like the frame of the face of grown up Christy. And they look like they could have come out of her. And the fact that Dennis resembles Mika so much, this is where what I talked about before,
uh-huh.
why Katie might retroactively, like looking back, why she might have looked to Mika to protect her so much, because Dennis cared so much. He was
Right.
so vigilant, and they look so much alike, except
That's
Dennis, I
interesting.
can't tell if I think Dennis is hot because he's better at taking care of the people he loves than Mika is, because I don't find Mika attractive, but I don't know if the reason I don't find Mika attractive is because he's such a fucking douche.
Yeah, I remember when I was watching it on my laptop,
Yeah.
my buddy was like, "Oh, Mika's hot." I'm like, "But everything about what's happening, like that, doesn't that taint it?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "All right, all right."
Maybe if he's a decent guy in real life, maybe I don't
Well, that's
know.
one of the things I just found this one after two movies where the men were useless.
Yeah,
I thought it was refreshing now to have someone trying to solve a problem.
absolutely.
And
So this
I'll
isn't
give
just like a bad dad franchise.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll give this movie props. I completely believe, chronologically speaking, I'll say this for this one, the fact that he's a videographer,
Hmm.
so he would start shooting this makes sense. He's crafty and he's putting stuff around the house. I buy it.
Yeah.
I also buy that 18 years later you have a home break-in and you're going to set up cameras. I go, I buy it. I also buy that this guy would be obsessed with like, I'm going to get this camera and start shooting this. All
Do
three
you
of those
buy that
movies
he? Yeah.
organically function within a found footage movie believably. I don't even go as far as to say I actually quite like four. Also, one, two, three, four. I believe how and why that things are still being filmed, whereas other movies you have to question it.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, we'll cross that bridge in a
sure,
second. But
but
because yeah, go on.
eventually it gets lost on me. But they're
Okay.
one, two, and three. Like for example, Cloverfield.
Hmm.
There's the part where the dude gets killed. I think they're in like Central Park,
Yeah.
and they're running from a giant monster, and the guy goes, "No!" and he runs back and picks up the camera. And anyone who knows, if you're in the middle of a park with a giant monster coming at you,
Uh-huh.
you're not gonna run back and pick up your buddy's camera. I cite that as like the kind of moments that pop a level of believability because for a lot of these movies, you would admit you probably might
Okay.
not be shooting anymore, but you can go with it to a certain degree. And I go with it for one, two, three, and most of four.
See, that's interesting to me because three was the one where I started to kind of have the disbelief just because, okay, first off, like, and it's been said, but the framing, there was no 16:9 framing. I don't care how
Oh, I just
professional
I
a
just go with it.
videographer you
I
were.
just I just go with
No,
it.
no, and that's fine. I do
Yeah.
too, but that was the first time I was just kind of like, oh, well, it would have been nice if it had been standard definition. But I get it. It's now a big mainstream thing. But if they had stuck with like the conceit of like an original indie kind of like thing, it would have been nice. It
Yeah.
would have lent more authenticity to it. You know me, authenticity is the word of the game. But also the fact, because of that, the fact that all these video cameras are set up all over the house, yet he would have to keep refreshing those tapes, even if he taped EP, SLP, whatever it was,
Yeah.
every 6 hours. Like I was just kind of like, okay.
So,
I mean,
when the
I'll
kids
give
wake up, he's
over.
missing a few hours when he gets there in the morning. Like,
Sure.
I bought it, but they didn't go
Okay.
like, but also the angles, they don't, as opposed to coming from a movie where they have security cameras, they really are just like the one in our bedroom, the one in the
Right.
kid's bedroom, and sometimes I bring it to the kitchen, and that's.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna come down with more of my things. Not so much. I mean, I guess they're criticisms. Just not, and they don't bother me in the body of the film. It's not the film's fault per se, like, but so much as this was the first one that Henry Joost and
Yes,
Ariel Schulman came on, who did
yes,
Catfish,
catfish
and they,
guys.
and they also did Part Four,
Yep.
and they brought Christopher Landon on
I,
as a writer.
I was going to mention this because you were
Yeah.
talking about series continuity,
Right.
and how this one started when franchises have a singular writer. I know you're going out with Christopher Landon, but Christopher Landon was one of the, I think, three co-writers of two,
I think so.
which
Let me
leads him
let me double
into,
check.
no, I can tell you, he's one of the co-writers of two.
Yeah.
And then he becomes the sole writer of three and four and the marked
Hmm.
ones and directed the marked
Right.
ones. So if there's,
Yes.
and you can feel his absence with the sixth one.
Insects. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. But, so I don't know if he's necessarily the one, especially if they did reshoots, which I mean, we both get a strong feeling like they must have. Because that's usually, why else would there be a trailer with all of this footage and then all of a sudden a film comes out with very little of it in it.
Yeah.
But there were also things in its initial in the lore, things that changed from the stories. Like rewatching one and two again, I was kind of like, I would have liked to have seen this movie too. Like Christy talking about, I mean, Katie talking about Christy's anxiety attacks, being scared all the time,
Mhm.
crying all the time. She couldn't sleep. She stopped talking for months. And mom
That's
was upset all the time. And do you want to end up just like mom? And then the more we paid attention to it, the worse it got. And all of that stuff, I feel like if they did include it, it was obliquely, like, or really tentatively. And then because Christy actually almost seems empowered by Toby.
Mm-hmm.
She's not afraid of him at all until the very end when they're in the house. And since you really, really like the finale, I wanted to ask you, because she's terrified and trembling, running along with Dennis, hiding in that closet and everything like that. And yet in the next moment after he's dead, she goes, "Come on, Toby." Do you believe she was faking being scared, or that she was under some kind of like divine influence? Or not
Sometimes,
divine, but
sometimes I like
magical.
to tell myself that she's faking,
Okay.
but also I can't help but wonder if the things that Toby has told her and slash maybe offered her, seduced her with, have become more tempting since that incident.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's charmed her more, so now she's more on board.
Okay.
I never ever got the sense that it was uh, a choice between Katie or whatever the
Oh,
boyfriend's name was. I always
that's
just,
exactly what I thought, because he's imprisoning her sister inside of that little
oh, I
room
mean, in that
again.
given moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah,
that's
I
that's
thought
why.
there was like a bigger picture sort of thing, but yeah,
No, no, no. Just that immediacy, like, okay, you're scaring my sister. She's
yeah.
terrified. You're asking me to offer up Dennis, and I don't want to. That's why I've spent this whole movie denying it. But and I got to reiterate, I really, really something about little Christy in particular, her casting. I think they're all great, but something about her vulnerability, her sweet little voice, the fact that the first time we see her at the birthday party, she's sitting alone talking to nobody.
Hmm.
It makes me feel so bad for her. And it would have been interesting. Maybe they were afraid of like putting that little girl through the kind of performance it would take to kind of pay off the lore they already built up in the previous movies. But I really would have loved to have seen that movie, to see her have a nervous, like a
Right,
complete
because
nervous
everything seems so
breakdown.
playful and jovial. I mean, and that's one thing I think is interesting is the way that Toby is essentially playing with
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
And
Even when
she's jumping
she's,
off the, tee hee hee. There's a lot of tee hee hee.
yeah,
But
even when
my
she's
problem,
angry at him, she's not scared.
I
She's
like
just
2
like,
and 3, but they do,
yeah.
again, they go off the rails from what was said in 1, which was that like it was after me more than Christy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember laying in bed being terrified, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the third movie just proves it. Well, it's clearly once they decided like, well, it's Christy who's giving birth to Hunter, and that this seems to be Toby's focus, and that the first movie was just like a side thing that got deviated because of a spell that was said, but it's always been Christy and Hunter's line.
Yeah.
But I still, like you said, I want to see that movie where it's Katie's struggle with this fear, and that's just sort of out the
Yeah.
window once they commit to that. And I like the story and where it went. It just doesn't match that first movie.
Right. Also, I don't know. I didn't feel. I get what you're saying now. I didn't really think about two feeling like a retcon. I just thought Christy had the next heir, like the next male child. That's why
Mhm.
she became the
Sure,
focus of the demon's wrath.
correct. Then what?
And then when they,
But that still doesn't match what Katie's history is.
but it I don't know. It makes, yeah, I guess
Because even
it
if
is a
it's,
bit of a retcon in the second
it
one.
is.
Damn, I didn't want it to be.
No, it is. Even though Katie is the one being, she has more encounters with Toby in a more negative way in this movie.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still him at the foot of Christie's bed every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, but yeah, I mean, there were tons of things in this third movie that I thought were incredibly real feeling. Like I love them in the tent outside, and he brings them cookies, and they take out those ice cream toys, like it's like ice cream cone, but you push a button and it just hurtles out towards you. My sister had one of those, and but the strongest thing for me with this movie, you brought up the banging on the door. It works for me. I love the bathroom sequence. I love
Oh,
Randy.
that's actually a different. It's a different scene I was
Oh, I
referencing.
thought that's what you meant with
But
the
I'm glad
banging
you're
on the
bringing this
door.
up
Okay,
because I just want to tell you mine because that's my favorite scene, and
me
I
too.
really want to get to that. But
Yeah.
no, just there's a scene where it's the middle of the night. It's only like night 2 or something, or night 3, and because a
Yeah.
lot of the nights are just like Christy getting up and fucking running around, doing goofy shit.
Yeah.
Um, the camera in their bedroom is kind of pointless because it's never really fucking with them too much. But he leaves to go find Christy. He hears something and he leaves. And then he just bursts into the room and the door goes thunk really loud. And he's like, hey,
Right. Yeah.
and that was the first time where I'm like, oh God, he did a loud jump scare. But at least it wasn't, but at least you, at the speed he came into the room, he would have hit the door that hard and loud. So I'll give you that movie. But yeah, this is the one that really starts to play. It's not that drastic until a little bit later, but this one starts the little bit of the door. It doesn't do that thing, thankfully, that I absolutely hate. And I think the sixth movie does it. And Lord knows lots of other movies that are found footage do this. I think the Blair Witch did it like 8 times, where the camera's looking and then it just sees someone and there's a loud like, and it's never like the person going, I'm going to kill you. It's just, oh, hey, Steve. But it's always a loud thunk and a shake and a loud noise for no reason.
You mean like the hi Dennis, and then babysitter gets out of view.
And it's always the camera shakes and the muffling of the mic, and it just the sound pops, and
it's
for the most part this franchise stays away from it. But the first time I had that itch, I'm like, oh God, was the third movie.
It felt manipulative, yeah.
Also, the third movie has, it's actually a good beat when the fan's moving and then we see the chandelier swinging and we go and it drops and I'm like, wait a minute. First movie, loud sound and we see the chandelier swinging. Second movie, I can't remember if in the second movie the chandelier falls, but there's definitely a swinging chandelier in the second movie. With swinging lights.
Yeah.
The third one, I'm like, man, all these people with their houses and their chandelier. The ghost loves to like chandeliers. And then sure enough, we get to the fourth one, and guess what happens again?
Fucking chandelier.
And like this franchise and the chandeliers.
I am
marked
right
ones
there with you.
The marked ones is the only one where they don't have a goddamn chandelier.
Thank God.
Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure in the sixth one, if I remember correctly, I think there's a damn chandelier again. No, I don't remember.
I wasn't paying as close attention as I should have. Yeah, there's a Christmas tree and there's something.
If there's any token thing to this franchise, to me, it's
the chandelier swinging.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah.
But yeah, Randy, my favorite character in this movie, my favorite performance in this movie. I raved about this then, and my opinion hasn't changed when it comes to actors who can find the truth of any given moment, whether it's like, hey, I'm thirsty, or I like that girl, or but his fear is one of the best continued performances of like, I'm scared. Yeah. You can hear it. You can hear weakness in his voice.
Yeah.
But also that could have just been it. But the fact that he's fighting to keep it cool for the girl.
For her, yeah.
Or is it Christy or
Katie? Katie. He's with Katie. She wants to do Bloody Mary.
Yeah, but his trembling of it's like, oh, it's okay. It's gonna be fine.
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm not even seeing it, but I can feel his arms shaking. You know what I mean?
Even the way he lifts to show the claw and everything. The claw mark that he got, the way, because he does it the way it's like, what it is. You felt what happened to you. And this is going to make it real. Yeah.
How did that guy not get like so much? Instantly ingrained in my head. One of my favorite performances.
Yeah, and again, and everything leading up to it too. He never loses that level of, I am like in the what's the word, in the charge of someone else's child, because that adds a whole other level of nerves to it, because it's not just your kid. It's one thing if it's you and your kid and your natural impulse to protect them, but when it's the kid, like the surrogate or adopted child of, or stepchild of your friend or your coworker, and they're off taking care of some trauma that their other child is going through, because Christy is sick because Toby made her that way because she won't give up Dennis. There's this level of just kind of like, well, I want to keep her happy. She's had enough doom and gloom and everything like that. Here she wants to do Bloody Mary. She doesn't want to just play with Barbies and everything like that. Okay, well, you know what? We're going to do it, but I'm scared. And the fact, I don't know, he walks this incredible line of, I don't even know how to put it. I never doubt the reality of that moment. There are other moments in the movie where where I pull out or I question or whatever, but this is the only sequence in the movie where I'm completely on board the entire time, and I'm right there. And the banging on the door, not just because it's scary to have somebody banging on the door, but because it's evocative of what happened in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm experiencing Katie's trauma for the first time. You know, that the next door that's going to bang for her, or the next one that we're going to experience with her, is in the first movie. It is her bedroom. It is when she's with Mika and she has someone who doesn't take nearly as good care of her
As this guy does.
as
Yeah.
Randy does. And it makes me wonder, like, if I think I used to wish that Mika was written better or given some dimension or whatever. But the thing is, like, this most recent time, I felt like his dimension, it just like a lot of people, sometimes it just takes a lot to get someone to strip away their protective or their douchey layers.
I don't wish he was written better. I think he was written exactly as they intended for that story.
That's how I feel now.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that, again, that Randy gets to be another dependable guy who made a mistake and knows he made a mistake and does the first thing any of us would do after that sequence. He gets the fuck out and tells Dennis, you need to stop this, and you need to tell their mom.
And also the brevity of, like, wait, that's it? And just I gotta go.
Yeah.
I haven't been in scary situations like that, but I have been in situations that are, like, pressing in a different way. And I have, again, when you can find some truth to something you can relate to, but I've been that guy that's like, packing up my stuff, like, oh yeah, bye. And not in a very showy way. Like, it's coming from a place of trauma and I need to leave, versus some actory choice of, like, you crazy, bye. No.
And I think what saves this movie at the end of the day for me, because I do have a lot of criticism for it, is the believability of the people that I'm watching. The fact that I believe I'm watching little Katie and little Christy and their family, and the situations. Just the I don't feel like anybody reacts in a way that isn't believable to something in this movie. Even the fact that, like, the mother is given to dismiss everything initially because this is just what kids do. Kids make believe. They talk about things that never exist. Katie used to wake up asleep, after sleeping on the toilet.
Right.
I mean, they do weird things. Believe me, in a week, Toby's going to be no more. She won't even remember what Toby is. She'll be on to her next kick. I don't judge her for that. Whereas, if we can move on to 4.
Yeah.
Can we move on to 4?
Yeah. Something that sounds like you're not a big fan of.
I don't. I'm glad I watched it again, because this was one, when I did my initial ranking, the post that started all this on Instagram. This was the one I didn't rewatch because I didn't feel like I needed to. But when I knew we were going to be talking about it, I thought, you know what, I should at least have something to say, because I didn't really remember very much about it. I just remember being bored, and the first time, and I remembered I didn't see it in the theater. I just rented it. It didn't work on me. And I think the reason why I was so bored initially, and why it's not one of my favorites, is because nothing really new gets exposed in 4 for me. It's just kind of like maybe a few minor details here and there about things we already know that don't really help us along. I guess they help the new characters along, but the strengths are in. There's 2 things that I like about it. I like the fact that we are led on a wild goose chase, expecting that this little boy, the weird little boy, is Hunter. And then we find out that it isn't. And because that was a reveal to me. I totally thought that's Hunter.
Same here.
He's with Aunt Katie. And because he behaved so strangely, like he was raised in a cult.
However, do you find that, like, it's a bit of a reach to be like, okay, so here's how it works. You get the kid who's going to be the vessel, and then you give him up for adoption, and then you send in another kid to bring him back.
Exactly. Like
it's a cool twist, but why?
How
now that the twist is over,
Yeah, how did Demon
Oh yeah,
Katie
well,
lose Baby Hunter?
I don't think she ever lost him. I thought this was all intentional. I just thought it's silly. Like, oh yeah, no, don't you know that he has to find an like it's a test of his thing. You need to send the emissary child to then, so he now chooses to, like, okay. That's
It
the
just
impression I got,
exhausts
is
me.
that they can't be raised in the cult. They have to be away from the cult and
Okay.
make the choice. And the choice has to be presented by like an emissary child.
I was going to ask you about choice, if you felt like that figured in, because one thing I also didn't understand is once they kind of identify where he is, if she was looking for him, if she, for whatever reason, kind of lost tabs on him or whatever, um, why wouldn't, why, it never gets explained, and it's not in one of those mysterious ways that feeds it never really gets explained whether choice figures in, because I don't understand why you can't just, you have so many options to just kind of like kidnap the child. Because choice, it always seemed to kind of figure in only when they needed it to, like,
Which is a benchmark of the franchise from here on out, too.
yeah. And this is where we really, this is also like where I say like nothing really new gets exposed. I think I mean nothing really helpful gets exposed for me, nothing of particular interest that adds to the intrigue, that adds to my cinematic experience sitting here in movie four. um
More
it
more
doesn't, it doesn't
minutia,
draw me in.
more minutia to the lore gets added, but it's not the next big thing in the lore. It's just like this one is about essentially a hunter continuing to like be on the path that we set him up for in two.
Hmm.
And it seems to be that the payoff, not the payoff, but the thing that's necessary is they mentioned like you need the sacrifice of like someone who hasn't been touched, right? And there's a joke
Hmm.
between what's her nuts and who's his tits about how like, hey, virgin, well, it's not going to need me then. You know, I could take you
Yeah.
upstairs, and it seems like at the end of the movie, this is a very abrupt ending for the movie. When the coven comes for her, like that's it. Like this is her. They sacrifice her so that. But again, it
Yeah.
can't just be, oh, now we have Hunter. It has to be, oh, there's a thing. We need to have
Hmm.
a sacrifice of virgin blood so that this can happen, and it's all just. It doesn't enrich the story. It just adds more details.
We find out
It's
about
more technicality to the lore.
The Hattusak symbol of fertility, whereupon a demon takes possession of a male child. Big whoop for me. Um, and also the fact that, also like the whole what's her nuts of it all, like the fact that I didn't know her name is Alex. I didn't know her name until I was maybe about 2/3 into the movie when somebody said it. I kept waiting for somebody to say her name. Maybe they did super early and I just missed it because I was paying attention to something else. And Ben actually is my favorite thing, her boyfriend,
I like
about
the
this movie.
I like the two of them
He,
a lot.
yeah, and I
That was
forgot.
my number one thing. That was what carried this movie for me was their
Mhm,
chemistry and their
mhm.
charm. I really believe the two of them and found myself rooting for the two of them.
See, I didn't root for her,
I did,
um,
but it
because
also it came through the prism of him though.
yeah, like I didn't want him to be in trouble. Like when he,
No, but you can obviously
I literally
he's
wrote,
into her, and
yeah,
and obviously they're coming from a place of friendship that's
yeah, it's early in
it's
this
slowly
relationship.
evolving into
Yeah,
something. So it's never just
yeah,
like I'm the football guy and you're the cheerleader, and I'm just going to ask you out. You could tell that they've been buds. They established that like
yeah,
he's your best friend. That's evolving into something in that way that sometimes teenage things evolve into, and it's still kind of new
yeah.
for her. And I like that they're still friends through it. But
Okay.
when I see the two of like again, not to be like, oh, I can relate to, but I can relate to liking the girl that I'm still friends with, and trying to maintain that, and the fact that I forget, I think she's wearing like an ACDC post, but she's got the stuff on her wall that I'm like, yeah, you're not like most of the other like typical pretty girls. Like there's something a little more. You put
Hmm.
up with me shooting movies,
You
and
got more of an edge.
yeah, there's just something. There's something to her. Like at least she can play the guitar. At least there's and also she. Here's a little thing. It's a little thing. But I love what a good sister she is, because you know that the parents are going through some bullshit.
Yeah,
And in the like one of the very first scenes, they're at the soccer game, and the dad shows up late, and the mom starts being like, "Oh, you're gonna murder?" And the second it becomes a tension, and you can tell it's about to become like not a fight, but like bickering.
Yeah.
She instantly goes, "Hey, go over here. You want to see something cool?" And then she starts doing like cartwheels for him. And like
Yeah.
I know instantly what she's doing and why. And within her first or second scene, I'm instantly endeared to her because she
Right.
cares. And just
Okay.
again, Mika doesn't care.
Yes.
This girl cares. And
Okay. Yeah. No. That opening.
that
Yeah.
opening
Sure. That
scene told me everything.
absolutely. I do. In retrospect, I actually that one hadn't resonated with me because there's too many other things. I found myself the criticisms kind of overpowered me, and I'll only mention. I won't mention all of them, but things about like broadly the miscommunication and the dismissal within the family for me feels crafted for a screenplay and not authentic, just because I think about like when that chandelier falls and the way she's filming her dad. I mean, I just felt like it was written poorly or executed poorly, because I thought about the situation: a chandelier falls, your kid is filming you on their phone to get your reaction, trying to tell you that it was a ghost and that, you know, all this shit is going down. And all he does is kind of dismiss her and just go on it. And I'm like, you know what would have drawn me in? Even like me, who says I don't like these disbelief or whatever, things like that. If you find a rational reason for it, I can get on board. Like if her father and mother thought she was trying to trick them, or that she was like a crazy attention whore just trying to make drama, but it doesn't even feel like that's implied. It just feels like they just dismiss her because it works for her, because they can't find out too soon. And the whole looming divorce, because I think she says on the phone at one point when she's talking with Ben that, you know, she doesn't know, they might, you know, she doesn't know, they don't talk anymore, they just don't get along anymore, or something like that. I don't, it just felt screen
Yeah,
writ.
there doesn't end up being much to it, but I appreciate the setup that it gives her. And also it
Mm-hmm.
allows me to be a little scared when like the dad's sleeping on the couch and I'm like, oh God, get out of that living room, get out of that living room. But
See, I wasn't scared
these are
then. I
very basic
wasn't.
things. No, I'm like, oh dude, you don't even
Yeah.
know what happens in the living room. You gotta get out.
No, but also, oh,
But
because bleh,
you go ahead.
bleh, one moment
Go.
that made me turn on her, another moment that made me turn on her. You say, like, you talk about a good sister and everything like that. When she starts losing him to Robbie, the weird kid,
Mhm.
and she's talking to her brother, and she's asking him questions, and there's literally, I think, their reflection in the mirror, so you can see her filming her brother talking to him with his friend right next to him, and her brother is no longer speaking to her, and she's just like, well, I don't like that, you know, you can't talk to me just when your friends are around. You should be able to talk to me no matter what. And I'm like, maybe he doesn't like having the fucking phone in his face when you're asking him to explain himself. Like, I was like, I wanted.
See, I'm still with her because I'm like, no, something's clearly wrong, and she's not beating around the bush with him, and I don't know.
But let me
I'm
ask you,
fine
if
with her.
something were, if we were like, you know, like rooming together or something like that, and some shit was up with me, and you wanted to get it out of me, would the first way you appeal to me be to stick the phone that you've been putting in my face the whole
That's a good
movie,
point.
put it in my face and get me to talk on the spot about what's going on? Because then I think you don't really care about me, you just care about your fucking movie. Because I didn't want, I didn't know, does the whole family know that their laptops are filming them the entire time? I don't know if that was ever explained. Otherwise, why wouldn't they just close the laptops? Because the laptops are up. And also I'm thinking like, whoa, they have to be charging like round the
Well,
clock.
yeah. Well,
Nobody ever moves their laptops in this house.
I just
It
presume
just,
like mom leaves in the corner, it's open, but it's on sleep mode, and yeah, I'd probably just leave it charged. I mean,
they
I know a
say
lot of
she only
people.
uses it for recipes.
I know people who are really foolish about like their electronics and like leaving them in all the time. Like, you know, you can unplug that, right? Like, some people just don't. I'm not trying to make excuses for this movie because people do that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, but going back, I was very nervous about the introduction of these two kids, and I was very surprised within the first 5-10 minutes. I'm like, oh, no, I'm okay with you. I don't have to be worried. I actually like you two as lead
Mm,
characters. But also, I really believe more so than any of the other movies, people do take their laptops with them, and
mm-hmm.
believably, you can set it up like more so than someone setting up a camera. This to me is one of the most believable versions of how they're recording and their placement of them.
Mm-hmm.
We live in the
Okay.
age that this is a regular thing.
But that they never
And, and
move them to use them. Like, or if they do, then
Well,
it's
she picks it up from time to time, but it's the kitchen
but the rest of
one
the
and the
family, like her
living room.
dad, at one point he moves it when the knife falls.
I just figure it's the kitchen one, and they hardly use it. I
But
believe it.
also the knife. Like there's a knife on the ceiling that nobody sees for what is it, a day or
Wait,
two?
well,
It's,
I had to justify that it left the room. Like it's not
oh
just
really?
floating there all the time.
I didn't. Well,
It's just gone, and then
see.
it
You
comes
did a.
back. But it took
This is a.
it took the third viewing for me to go, oh yeah, because maybe it left. Because I always imagine it's just floating up there.
I love this because usually I'm the one. You, I think, what have you
You,
called me? Forgiving. You've called me an incredibly forgiving, I think was the term, audience member. And with this movie, I just wasn't feeling it. So it's
I know,
wonderful to
and
kind of be on the
I
other
make
side of it.
excuses for this movie. Because and honestly, it's one of the lesser ones for me. But I remember, okay, so I saw it in theaters,
Hmm.
and I remember Tracy watched 1 and 2 and 3 at home with me,
Hmm.
and she worked up the nerve to go see 4, like in a theater. She's like, yeah, I'll go do it. And then it was like the least scary one. Like she
Yeah.
was fine during it, and I was
Yeah.
mostly fine during it. And I was never fine
Yeah.
during 1 and 2 and 3. Every time there was
No.
like night, whatever, I'm like, oh fuck. I didn't really ever have
Yeah.
oh fuck in this one.
No, me
Although,
neither.
and
Although
this is
one
the
jump
first.
scare worked for me.
Although I mean,
One jump scare.
there's a
It
few
was the
for me.
witch. When she goes across the street, she's filming, and then all of a sudden there's a woman there.
Yeah.
That was the only time, and that's justifiable because, like, oh, that would fucking freak me out too. That was the one jump scare where I was just kind of like, oh, fuck, get out of there.
There's a few more subtle scares that worked for me, but yeah, that's one of the few jump scares. The chandelier falling doesn't. Again, it was like the fourth chandelier falling for this franchise. Um,
But also, the little boy with his big wheel, two chairs block his big
oh
wheel, and he
yeah.
has no reaction to it. And then the big wheel starts to move of its own accord, and he still has no real reaction
Well,
to it.
if anything, I think he laughs.
Yeah.
Again, the third,
No.
but the previous movie set up this notion that like Toby is playful with you first, like he's gaining your trust, he's seducing you, he's playtime. You jump off the thing and he'll catch you, he'll
Hmm.
lift you up and float you.
And because that was one of
I'll
the retcons about 3 that I didn't like, I think
oh,
it
you're not
it
with
just
yeah.
I just I no, I'm not on board with it. I don't like. It made sense when it was little baby Hunter because he's a baby. Babies don't know. Like maybe he just literally saw a shadow and was just like, "What is that?" And it's different than having a full-on conversation with something that calls itself something. And I prefer children in peril. I don't. Does that make me bad?
In movies, it's fine. In
Yeah,
life,
in
you're a
movies. In
monster.
movies. No. I don't put
No,
children in peril. I
it,
can't. Kids aren't scared of me.
one of the things about the other three movies, they all kind of function. I mean, you have to have seen them to a certain degree, like the franchise, but you can
Yeah.
still kind of get on board if you kind of came in the middle and go, "What's going on? Oh, there's this ghost and it's fucking people while they're sleeping." Oh, okay. But this is the first one where a lot of the nighttime stuff is I forget if it's Robbie, but stuff going on in the house where like it really has to do with Toby and
Hmm.
his kid and him talking to him in the middle of the night and him get that it loses that sort of everyday organic thing that you can be afraid of in the middle of the night, and it becomes very more lore and mythology specific.
Yeah.
All the nighttime scenarios are more story building, and I mean it is what it is at this point, but you can't come into 4 the way you could come into some of the other ones.
No. But that said, I stand by Matt Shively playing Ben. It's a saving grace for me. Every time he was on screen, I was entertained. I was engaged. I was like, I wish somebody would have had the presence of mind to see him and go, you know what, the movie should be about him. Let's just change everything and
No,
make it
he's the
about
best
him. We've got,
part, and
yeah.
also that's the other justification for me isn't just the laptops, but the fact that early on, her dad says like, "Oh, I like that little movie you made. It was good." We've established that this kid carries around a camera and is always shooting shit and making little
Mhm.
movies. So I understand when the parents see him with his camera or his phone out all the time. Like I buy it. I buy it. This kid is that kid.
And
What I don't buy, and we'll get to it in the marked ones, is like, hey, it's a cool camera. Oh, I want one. Now I'm just gonna walk around everywhere in downtown LA. I'm getting a soda and I'm gonna shoot me getting a soda.
okay, let's
And
go into marked ones,
wait, wait,
please.
wait. I'm not
Oh, you're not
not done.
done? Oh
Just
my God, go.
one of the little things that bugs me about they do this, they commit this is the first movie that does the sin that I don't like, and I hate it, is when in the middle of a scene, so it's the same scene. We're not cutting to a new scene, but clearly like if you're watching the tapes or whatever, the scene would go on longer. So they've done a cut in the middle of it. And when the scene cuts, it's a jump. Like the cut is
Oh.
to someone just closer in frame,
Hmm.
bumping into it. And they do that like 2 times in this movie. I just think it's cheap.
Yeah.
It's not even a jump scare where like a guy goes, hi. It's just, we're going to cut the scene and add a sound effect to fuck with you. And it has no point other than fucking with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lack of I don't know if it was producers, but I feel I didn't get that sense from the catfish guys in the last movie. And the last thing I want to say,
No.
especially someone who defends this movie, I very unsatisfied with the ending.
Yeah.
One of the things, well,
Yeah.
actually, I'll say something really nice about this movie too. All the movies, but I think this one really does it well. One of the things I love about all these movies is one, the lack of score, but two, I don't think the sound designers get enough credit for creating the atmosphere of a house so
Okay.
well, so that when something scary happens, but also
Mm.
just in the middle of an afternoon, just the little, there is a way to like edit silence, but also there's a way to create just the little minutia, but it you could overlook it and just do something very basic, but this is gonna sound stupid, but it sounds the way an empty house does in the middle of the afternoon.
Mm.
And
Okay.
that just sells me on it more because 2 starts to play with some daytime scares. And this one to me has some pretty blunt daytime shit,
Hmm.
especially towards the last act when it's the middle of the afternoon and Katie's just standing in their living room.
Hmm.
Um, this one
Yeah.
has some really effective, the fact that um, the I can't remember his name again, but whatever. Little boyfriend, not boyfriend guy gets killed in the middle of the
Ben.
afternoon. The mom gets
Ben.
killed in the afternoon. She gets
Yeah.
attacked in the afternoon.
Yeah. I
I'm
laughed
a
when the mom got killed, though. I was laughing, and I never laughed in any of the deaths or any of the
see.
assaults in the first three movies.
I actually laughed more when Ben died
Oh, really? No, I was
because
like,
yeah,
no,
when
not
she
Ben.
drops, I just go ooh. But his was the first time like I felt the effect was not awesome when his head turns, and also I just became so aware of like Katie just super. She like Thored him like Hulk could do that,
Well, she did that in
but
two, also to
right, and well, that's
she.
what I started thinking back. I'm like, well, in 2, she snaps a dude's neck, but it's like a wider shot, so I was okay with
Yeah.
it. But she hits Christy, and then I realized, no, this franchise has had a precedent of like Katie has superpowers that I just maybe I just never
Demon
really gave.
Katie.
Well, right, that's the truth is the powers are coming from something not from her. But even going back to
Yeah.
the first movie, she throws Mika like from the stairs all the way
Yeah.
into the bedroom. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So but I was something about just the close up. Oh, another thing I like about this movie, ha ha ha, is that I like the fact that with laptops we now have we're always seeing the room, but this time
Mm-hmm.
we actually get a character in frame where we could see what's behind them. We can now play on the fear of what's going to be happening behind them and the anticipation of that's something the franchise hadn't had, and it felt new to see over her shoulder when they're on the phone and we know there's the door and is the door moving or is there going to be someone coming. There was more anticipation.
I don't think it didn't have it before then. I feel like it's just a different way of exploring it. Because one thing I did like in terms of the framing was it made me wonder like, is that digital like visual noise or is that something supposed to be something supernatural moving, and a real person would look at it and think that way. But there were always things like that in the previous ones, not maybe not the first one so much, but the second one, God, what was it? Just because of the depth of the house from the security camera, particularly from the living room through, like you would just kind of be scanning the screen, like where something's going to happen somewhere. I must see it. I must know where to look.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in 3 there was something else that they played with in the background, and in this
But
because in the second one it was also the depth of field in Hunter's room because he had a bathroom that joined with Allie's room, and there was a mirror in there.
yeah,
So even if you saw Allie in her bedroom, you would see her reflected in the mirror in the background of Hunter's room. I mean,
there's
and they
plenty
played
of
with that a few
background
times.
stuff, but I'm talking about the fact that you can get the character in a close up and not someone else shooting Katie in a close-up when she's not filming, but the main character choosing their own close-up, but now she doesn't know what's behind them and we do. Felt fresh to me.
Yeah. Although
And in
at one
fact,
point,
I was just thinking about it because I don't know why my brain does this, why my brain wants to
yeah.
scare myself. But about a week before I rewatched 4, I was laying on the floor on my phone, and I remember thinking, you know, if something were to happen behind me, I'd be really vulnerable right now. I mean, granted, if I was sitting upright and on my phone, I'd still be focused on this. If someone was behind me, but at least I can leap to my feet. But right now, I'm on the ground. Like I'd have to get up and make the effort. Like my ribs are touching the ground, like my elbows. I'm more vulnerable, flat against the ground, not seeing behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a week later, I'm watching Paranormal 4, going, yeah, she's on her bed, on her like. You are more vulnerable with your ribs and stomach down, and she spends so much time laying in a more vulnerable position. You know.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I
good
don't
for you. I'm glad you got to discover that. And I do agree. I don't disagree. That said, you mentioned close up, and it just brought to mind one more thing that annoyed me about this movie. It was another jump scare, and it was so stupid to me because here she is on her laptop now. You and I are speaking very much the same way Ben and Alex were in 4. Ben disappears at one point, and she's like, Alex, 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 are you there? Alex, Alex, where are you? And then he scares her. Oh, because from behind. He does come
Right.
from behind and scares her. I can't think of you leaving your frame that I'm looking at you right now ever propelling me to lean forward and look like I can see. It's not a window.
Right.
It's a fucking screen.
Correct.
It's the stupidest. And it was designed to, I think, make us recoil
Yeah.
and make us scared, brace ourselves for something coming. And it did not work for me. It was so
I mean, I'm
stupid.
focusing on a lot of the things I can defend, but there's plenty in this movie that's,
Okay.
and
Well,
that's
yeah, and
definitely one of them. I like the Nintendo 3, was it a 360? No, not Nintendo, Xbox 360. I think the dots were a nice new thing. I got really creeped out when, like Katie would get up from the couch. I didn't like seeing that little echo of a kid.
no, the Katie reveal was the only thing that worked for me. The first one, the first reveal of her in the little green dots. But for the rest of the time, it just felt kind of like, what else can we do? And
I don't know.
it wasn't endearing enough to make me get on board. I
Well,
just couldn't.
what gets me, this is the most blatant I will be, and I like this franchise too much to be able to like really talk smack, but I don't like that Alex is attacked in the daytime at the end of the movie. And it's just she gets pulled out of the room. And unlike most movies where we cut to other angles or anything, it just cuts to her holding a camera and running down the street at night. I don't know how she got free.
Mm.
I don't know what happened, but she's now out of the house. So there's too much information that's passed. It's nighttime. She runs into the house across the street. Some shenanigans ensue very quickly. She falls out of a window, and then she sees like a horde, an unbelievably huge horde that I don't believe would fit in that backyard. It's a cheap scare that, first of all, wasn't at all scary. And then
No.
it just sort of stopped. And that's it. Like our big closer is just a shot of like 75 ladies. That's it was quick, it was rushed, it had no connection to anything, and it wasn't a satisfying ending. One last nice thing I'll say though,
Okay.
the first time they go, it's like halfway through the movie when Alex and Ben go into the house,
Mm-hmm.
and then Katie's there, and she just walks in the frame, and she's got this, it's played perfectly because we know what she is at this point,
Yeah.
but there is a polite, I don't want to say it's 100% menace, but there is like, oh yeah, no, thanks for bringing Robbie. Hey guys. She plays it perfectly. And it was the first time where not only did she return, I go, hey, it's the face of the franchise, but also like, oh, not 2, where we think it's a sequel and we're not
Yeah.
sure how to, like, now we know how to feel. And she is playing it just right.
I agree with that. Also, that said, the first time I saw this movie, and I was literally just, I had given up by then. And then when she came on screen, I was just like, where have you been? Oh my God. It would have been a much better movie if we could have just seen more of you earlier. I don't even know, and I can't even think about like how I would write 4 because I wouldn't have written 3 the way 3 was written. But
Let's move
but
on.
and
Oh, okay.
just to say,
It's
my immediate also response, just in terms of like the yard full of women, it's not because women can't be intimidating, they can,
no.
but my immediate thought when the light turned on them was, what would my response be? I'd just be like, "Hi, ladies," to try and diffuse the situation with, you know, some lightness and humor, just so they wouldn't attack me, because I did feel a menace. They don't look friendly.
No, they
But I
look
just
like
wondered how they'd
zombies.
react if I said hi like Chucky, like, hi. What do they do? I mean, if they can't scare me, you know, they're thriving on fear, like their master, you know, the Dark Lord, Toby.
Hi.
So let's talk about 5.
But that's wait before we get to, I just want to say the coven in the
We're
coven in
never going to stop talking
3,
about this. Yes.
the coven
Yeah.
in 3 just walk and carry themselves like creepy old people. The
Yeah.
coven at the end
Yeah.
of 4 are immediately like, oh, like,
Yeah.
yeah, just
The scary lady parade.
yeah. So Christopher Landon, he went on to write
Michael Landon's son.
yes,
Yeah.
uh, went on to write and direct this one,
Yeah. Thank
which
God.
which has I found more strengths on this new viewing than I did before.
Oh my God. Tell me what you thought the first time.
First time I saw it, again, anytime you bring up the lore, I'm like, ooh. And one of the things that, so the first 2 took place in 2006, and now we're catching up to like our time. And I remember when 2 ended, I thought, what about Allie? Allie survived all this. She wasn't home,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I remember thinking also about Randy, going like, are we ever going to see Randy again? That'd be cool if they brought Randy back. I don't know how, because he really
Mm-hmm.
did leave, but Allie knows too much. I guess we're just not going to bring her back. So this 5th one, which wasn't even sold as Paranormal Activity 5, it was sold as
No.
a spin-off.
Yeah.
And even
Within the universe
it's a
of
yeah,
Paranormal
spin-off, but
Activity,
like
but
I would even
yeah.
say calling it a spin-off is a bit bullshit, because so
Yeah.
much of it connects to the main story. It's
Yes.
barely a spin-off or a sidequel or whatever you want to call it. Um,
Yeah.
I thought bringing Allie in really excited me. I
Me
loved seeing her
too.
name on the board. I loved this one expands things in not a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
My beef with it, which I saw it then, was simply this: didn't find it scary at all.
Oh my
And
God.
whereas the other 4 movies, each main character I was nervous for and scared of what was going on. I just remember like he gets bit, and I'm like, oh no, and then he's like, hey, look, I can drop and something can catch me, and they're like, hey, this is cool, and I'm like, I'm not scared. He's jumping from a chair and he's being caught, and then his buddy tries, and it's funny because he falls, and then he's about to get jumped at the soda machine. He punches these guys he Hulk punches them, and I remember thinking like, so you're a superhero, like that's not scary. I mean, you might be scared of like what's happening to me, but I mean, I get more out of it now the second time. But that first time I
Okay.
saw it, I'm like, what about this is scary? It's not till he starts to really like lose who he is and his friends are getting scared for him that I
Mm-hmm.
start to kind of warm up to it. And now that I watch it, this is now my 3rd time,
Yeah.
I'm a little more on board. I still have a hard time believing why the hell this kid is shooting everything that he's shooting.
See,
They
something.
do. I can justify it, but I have to justify it in my head when he
Uh-huh.
actually has to go, hey, that's a cool camera. And you can tell that he's interested in it. Because now he's like, oh, I got this money and I'm going to spend it on this thing. And like, okay, fine. Maybe you're a little too old to be acting this way, but I can definitely see like a kid being like, look at this thing I got and I'm going to use it. I'm Kevin McAllister with my
Okay.
talk boy, you know?
See, something about the way it was crafted, and I mean the way it was told, written and shot. I think it's good that Christopher Landon got to envision something, write it, and then shoot it. Because for the first time since the first one, more than any of the other sequels, for me, this one is all about progressions, small movements. Each scene is just like swinging from the next limb of the tree and on. And because because it opens with a graduation, because the conversations that they're having even at the established shot of like a valedictorian and a kid like looking behind at his family while they're like making jokes and being inappropriate the way I am with my family. Drew me in, made me care when I'm watching him hug his grandma and show and look into the camera and say like, this is my all right here, this is my everything. I'm just like, this is a good kid. Like, I like these people.
No,
The fact
yeah,
that we got to meet Oscar afterwards, like, it so, from the get-go, drew me in, hooked me, that I I think that's kind of just, it's like the first domino got hit and they just kept falling for me. And I was on the ride, and I can't think if there's anything I questioned in this movie. It'll probably be in my notes. Oh, there was one, but we'll get there. It's very small. But I mean, just Jesse, Marisol, and Hector, just watching these three friends.
I like Hector.
Me too. Oh, I fucking love Hector, and I feel for him. I mean,
Finish
okay,
your
we can
thought, and
jump
I'll tell you my
ahead.
favorite. Finish your thought
Okay,
about.
go.
No, you finish your thought about Marisol
Okay,
and
okay, okay.
Hector.
Because I'll jump ahead to, because I love him. He's funny. I love watching him like go down the stairs and the laundry thing and everything like that. And I feel like I know exactly who he is. He's my cousin. He's a friend of the family. I know, who doesn't love Hector?
I'll tell you why I was endeared to him, because it only took one thing.
Yeah.
I love when someone reads my mind, and when he's like, dude, when Jesse's like, we should go downstairs and investigate. What do you mean investigate? What are you, Sherlock Holmes? And my thought was like, Sherlock Holmes? And then
Sherlock Holmes!
Sherlock Holmes! Yes! I'm like, this guy, he gets it.
Yes!
It's all it took.
Absolutely.
I really like him. But he also he plays a good scaredy cat, but also when he's losing Jesse, he really plays the loss of his friend, and like not just the disrespect, but the concern and the hurt.
Yeah.
He's not just worried about his friend, like he's hurt by Jesse, and he plays that really well, especially considering the type of guy he starts as. I'm not saying he was invulnerable, but I mean, he plays vulnerability in a way that I wasn't anticipating from that character.
Well, because this is the thing about that moment, like I was going to bring it up. There's a lot of moments with Hector for me, but one in particular is Jesse's really horrible mistreating of him when he picks up the camera. He's already demonified pretty much.
The worst.
But he's in his room and he just picks up the camera and he just starts filming him. And he just starts talking to him. I don't even remember. I remembered him saying much harsher things to him after the first time. So when I was watching it the second time, I've only seen it twice. Second time I'm sitting there and I'm just wondering like, oh shit, he's going to go for the kill now. And it wasn't what he said, but it was just the way he treated him. He was so cold. He wasn't giving Hector what Hector needed, which is, I think, the laugh, the smile, the camaraderie.
Yeah.
And he was just cutting off their friendship. And that was enough. Like, that fucking wounded Hector. It fucking wounded me. Another thing, you talk about, I'm just going to jump around like,
do it.
Fuck. But this, you
jump
talk about
around like
scary.
Fuck.
Like, fuck. The scariest thing for me in this movie, I love how simple it is. I love the fact that it doesn't have any big low rumble. It doesn't have any big dramatic sting. It doesn't have to do with anything that feels like a camera trick, because it feels very organic, is when Hector comes by again with the camera and Grandma's there and she's saying there's something wrong. She's speaking Spanish, saying there's something wrong with Jesse. You have to go help him. She keeps saying ayuda, ayuda. And so he goes in there. And the first thing we just see is Jesse in profile laughing at the wall or something. And he's just going, and it's like, what's going on? He's been weird up until now. He's laughing. That can't be any good. And when it's revealed, and it happened all over to me again this time, we talk about animals in peril. It's little Chavo, the little Chihuahua, is stuck on the ceiling. Oh, yeah.
I don't like that scene.
And neither do I. And he's in total distress. And Hector, and it lasts longer than I remembered it too. I just remember feeling the impact of it the first time. The fact that Hector is literally telling him like, no, and he puts down the camera. It's like, dude, you're hurting him. Stop it. You got to stop it. Jesse. And Jesse's just laughing and not listening to him. And it's toxic. And I mean, what's the plausibility of that happening? But because it isn't set up like a movie, it feels like found footage, and if it were real, it'd be fucked up. But the loss, what I feel more than anything, is the loss of Jesse and the loss of compassion as kind of like a presence in his existence, like what it is to be around him. Because I really liked Jesse at the beginning. I thought he was a good kid. I thought he was funny. I mean, they broke the law filming a naked lady in the Brujas
Mm-hmm.
in Crazy Anna's apartment downstairs, but uh, I worried about him. The thing is also, the thing that scared me was as he was discovering his powers, the reason it scared me is because he felt an exhilaration of benefiting from Toby's mark. He, and I knew it wasn't just going to be him having a great time. I knew these powers were
Oh
going to
yeah, I
come
knew it was
at a
gonna get
price.
worse.
Yeah, and the fact that he was enjoying it and that we haven't seen that yet. We haven't gotten to experience any of these boys reaching a mature age. And I do love
Right.
that Allie is the one who gives it to us, the information
Right.
about why it's
But he's a
happening
different, like,
now.
again, Hunter is a child and that's their purpose. This is something different. This is like an army of witch boys that turn
I didn't think it
18.
was different. I
Oh,
felt like it
absolutely do.
was, I wondered if it was like, I mean, again, I wondered if it was like Cult of Chucky and if um, this was just Toby's way of kind of inhabiting as many male bodies as he possibly could, and not necessarily creating an army, but of soldiers or something, but like an army of himself. He wanted to inhabit
Hmm.
and inherit the earth, and there was something because it felt
I'm not hip to that.
oh, okay, it really
I
preyed on my Catholicism that I was raised with. It comes back to me. I'm not Catholic anymore. I don't practice. Like, I'll take my mom to church if she wants to go on Mother's Day or something like that, and I won't make a big fuss about it. Like, it's still kind of pleasant to visit, but I have my own issues with it. But when shit like this goes on, like in this movie, I'm sitting there telling, like, you better listen to Grandma. Grandma doesn't
Yeah.
want you playing with the Simon. Grandma is putting the eggs on you and blessing
Yeah.
you and everything like that. Don't you grab Grandma. That's a sin. It just the fact that it used the sin factor also in a way that like this franchise hadn't really used, but at the same time goes back to as where the first movie is using tropes that I grew up with that I feel familiar with in terms of like values. It's largely a morality play. So is this one, except we're dealing with like the girl you don't know who you take to a place you don't belong and you're trying to have sex with her. And when you leave her to go get a condom, the responsible thing doesn't matter because you're somewhere you're not supposed to be. And Oscar, who is newly possessed and wrestling with that himself and bearing the mark, is going to freak the shit out of her and he's going to tell you what your fate is. And then you're just going to watch your fate play out before your eyes. All of that, I am so on board for it. So your turn.
I was just gonna say the impression I get is very Katie and Christie's story is very specific to them as far as their grandmother making a pact, joining this coven so they can have their firstborn, and specifically complicating it by the fact that like, well, now you're gonna make a deal with Toby. Like you're essentially getting married to him. Like she even as a kid, like they're gonna put on a little, she's like, I'm gonna marry Toby. So that
Yeah.
the essence is that Hunter, like this is a destiny for you. Like you are going to provide Toby with a vessel. I don't think these other boys are vessels. And the fact
Mm-hmm.
that there's so many of these missing kids from all over the world makes the mind real about how far does this coven go. And they even, I think they even refer to it in the marked ones as like some sort of not army, but I feel like it's mentioned in there. But I always got the impression that much like how the coven has a whole backyard full of women, they also have certain boys that become men. Because I mean, she even says like when he turned 18, right? Something about
Mm-hmm.
turning
Mm-hmm.
18, you become like warriors in Toby's service, you know. And that's all I
Mm.
got from this because I didn't feel like there was some more nefarious. But my only problem, it has nothing to do with this movie. It's just the fact that it's something new that they, at least to me, this army that they're bringing up gets completely dropped in the next movie and not even mentioned. So it just becomes a thing that I wonder about. Like, so what about all these other men? What about the other people that are like Jesse? In fact, what the fuck happened to Jesse? Because now that we know he and Hector travel through time to 2006,
Mm-hmm.
not like the movie needs to answer this, but I have to wonder, what does Jesse do in 2006? Or does he go
I
or does
don't
he
think he
go or does
stays.
he jump into another door and goes back?
I think
Um,
he was just chasing Hector, and because that's another thing that I love. I love the they introduced the playing with the timeline for the first time when he's in the attic and he sees young Katie and Christy, and you don't really know what it means. I don't care
yeah.
because
Well,
it's something mysterious. It's something we, the audience, recognize that he doesn't, and it's almost like I can sit there and kind of go, "Get the fuck out of there! You don't
see,
know what that is."
it wasn't until they established later that there's doors through time and space. But when I'm
Yeah,
first watching him go into like the crawl space attic area, whatever you want to call it,
yeah,
I remember being so irritated because they look like that in like 1988 or whatever. And all of a
yeah,
sudden, it's like, I know that we have access to these actresses, but it was the first time I felt like, oh, we're going to put them in the scene. Why? It's 2012. It's a spooky scene. It's like a spook house. You go around the curtain and there's those two girls and they have black eyes. I'm like, why are their
yeah.
eyes black? It never
That
occurred to me that like,
mhm.
oh, they took the door. Well, if that's the case, if they went through a door through space and time, why are they there? To spook Jesse for a few seconds. It felt spook housey, which I almost never respond to.
Okay. It didn't for me. I felt like it had less to do with Jesse per se, and more to do with the fact that it was Crazy Anna's attic, um, and maybe they were paying her a visit because Anna is
Knew the grandma.
actually she figures into their mythology because she's got that VHS tape
First of
box.
all, I loved so much of the world building in this. The fact that there's a photo of her with Katie and Christie's grandma, and the fact that she's the one
Hmm.
that's got the box of tapes. Although
Yeah.
even that, first of all, I freaked out because I'm like, oh, mythology, things I know, the tapes. And then you think about it later, and it's like, well, uh, they mentioned the tapes like were given to them when grandma died, like their grandma,
Yes.
that we
When
inherited.
Grandma Lois died, Katie got everything, and she wanted
And
to
then
store
and
it
then they
at
break
Christie's.
in and take the tapes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if the tapes are that important, why did the coven let her inherit them anyway? I don't know, whatever. But like, why does
I
she have the
feel like
tapes?
it.
It
Oh,
becomes a
see, and
question of like,
this is
why does
where
she have the tapes? And
see
I
this is
don't, I
where I
don't, I don't
start.
need it
Yeah,
answered.
we're
I'm not being like a dumb fanboy. Like, what? It didn't answer, but it makes my mind like wander. Like, so,
yeah,
like, is she safeguarding them, protecting them? Are they going to be used later by someone? Like, ooh, I like this. Between the photo
and
and the mark and all that, I'm down with the universe of it.
sure. And this is also where I think the more forgivable side of me starts filling in the blanks, where the way you accuse me of doing with movies, because with this one I just thought like, oh my god. So okay, somehow the tapes got to Katie before they could get to them, and then Katie left them over at Christie's, and because they're witches, they must have known like somehow, and she maybe even put a curse on it. But Crazy Anna is the one who broke into the house and
Absolutely.
stole the tapes, and that's why they're in her thing. And she's probably got shit in her refrigerator that is going to be in another movie. And she got, I mean, I was just going ape shit. It's just like so excited. I also, one thing I wanted to say, because I was curious because I saw this for the first time a little over a month ago. This is what prompted me to make the ranking that I
Oh,
posted
okay.
initially, because I hadn't finished off Paranormal Activity, and I was just kind of like, oh, you know what? I never finished that off, and I heard some interesting things about one of them. I don't remember which, like Ghost Dimension marked ones. It doesn't. They stop having numbers. I didn't know which one I heard what. Watched marked ones and fucking loved it, but I was curious, as I usually am, about like what the general reception was to it after I saw it, because I'm like, why didn't I hear more about this? And at the time it was released, I guess Chronicle was still too fresh in people's minds. So
Mm.
everybody was just saying, so Paranormal Activity ripped off Chronicle because they ran out of ideas. And I was like, no, wait,
Did
no. And
it?
I had to wonder, no, and this is the thing. I made a little thing. This is just, if I may get on my soapbox for a moment. The reason
Oh, please do.
why Chronicle and marked ones are different and not the same story at all. It's all about um, their conclusions. Because I feel like when you walk away from Chronicle, spoilers for Chronicle, everybody, sorry. Chronicle's conclusion is about determining who you are by what you do with what you have. Not that power corrupts, but that it's your decision how to wield that power. The marked ones is about inescapable fate, how the actions of those who came before us can have an unrestricted impact on the course of our lives. and I just wrote, Jesse's a good kid.
Right. I would agree with you.
Yeah. And none of this point is ever like, maybe the power exhilaration of it is necessary to kind of goad him into not immediately putting a stop to it, like seeking out a witch doctor or a bruja or somebody to help, an exorcist, whatever. Because by the time he realizes what's happening to him is deteriorating his spirit and what is best about him, what his friends miss the most about him, it's too late. And that's a through line for all of these movies, is there's always, or often, I feel at the best points, an identifiable point where it's just too late and you can't, you're beyond saving at this point, unfortunately. So that was how I felt about that.
I've never heard of the Chronicle comparison before, but I completely agree with you, because marked ones is an external force that I wouldn't only in the most shallow way of like, well, it's a boy and he goes bad. It's found footage.
Well, just like the young teenagers, or a teenager, like getting powers, thinking it's great, making video of himself, kind of celebrating it. I think that's what kind of resonated with people
a little bit.
And for me, Chronicle, I wasn't as concerned about all three of them, but I was, because I knew the franchise I was in watching marked ones, I was totally concerned for Jesse from the get-go, like just watching him. Also because it's not power. He, like, at first, the first thing he does is lean back and he doesn't fall. Something is
That's
there
not him.
preventing him.
Him. Yeah.
So something's protecting him. It has nothing to do with his free will, except something doesn't want him to get hurt because it wants to inhabit him. And I think intuitively something in me knew that and was terrified for the rest of the movie. And I just loved it.
Can I tell you two things?
Yeah, go for it.
No, you have a criticism?
I have one criticism. It's a tiny thing.
Okay. Who goes? You go. I go. You go. I
You
go.
go.
Two things I love about this movie. It was nice for what it was for 4 movies, but when I talk about certain things becoming breaths of fresh air, to get out of a suburban home, to see a whole cast of people who aren't white, aside from like a maid, it was just something new, and it felt. It was also a setting that like I hadn't seen tackled as something to where scary things could occur. Like I love the paranormal movies, but I've seen a big white suburban house be the central focus of things. Poltergeist, tons of movies. This, with its cast, with its city, fresh, brand new, within the franchise, let me go somewhere new. I really, really appreciated that. But also, the thing I really love is I love the finale of the movie. There's been several movies where you spend some time trying to convince a parent or someone this is what's going on, and ultimately something bad will happen to everyone. There's not a lot of, like in 4, the ghost just shows up and attacks Alex at home. Everyone's usually the victim of something by the climax of these movies. This one, they go over to I forget the valedictorian's name, Oscar. They go to Oscar's brother, and they go, well, let's go to this coven house that Allie told you about, and let's load up some guns. And when they're coming out and they get strapped, I'm like, it's movie in the franchise where you're actually gonna like have something to defend yourself, and you're gonna go on the offensive. I'm not saying it was the right or wrong decision, but as far as give me something fresh, when they are walking around the grounds, and the fact that like I already know what to expect at these grounds, so I know what they do.
And that we're in the house, and it's immediately recognizable. That's when.
And they go into the garage again, and I remember just 2 minutes ago what happened in the garage. But it's,
that long pathway.
But it's when they're by like the stables or something, and then like the witches first run at them. I was so on board when it was just like, and we're just blown away, random witches, and the fact that one on like them running across the yard is far more than from the end of 4.
And also, it's fresh because here 4 movies in, the dark side, as it were, has always had the upper hand.
And now we're capping
the first time we see some some bodies going down,
Yeah.
and I
And it's
have my
people who
own.
look like you and me doing it.
Yes.
That's representation.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because that
Yeah.
was a big part of it for me
I
too.
love
Because
it.
I think that
And
was a
that,
big thing that made 4 kind of tired for me was the fact, like, again,
it's
white
this,
people in a big house, chandeliers swinging.
it's starting to feel like the same thing. And now we're
Yeah.
and then of course they introduced the time traveling door, which I'm okay with in this one, but what they start to lead into with the next movie, I'm not as fond of. But
Well, we'll get there.
yeah. Do you have anything else?
Just my
Oh
one,
yeah,
the one
one
weakness
thing.
for me. It was something so simple, very technical. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, but one of the scenes down in the basement when I think I've been calling it the attic this whole time. I'm sorry if that's been annoying anybody.
You dummy.
Attics are overhead. I know things. In the basement, on his basement. I have neither, so that's why I get them confused. When they're down there, and I believe it's Grandma Lois is paying a visit, and she's leaving with like arms full of shit, probably the videotapes if I remember correctly. But and they're all Marisol, Hector, and Jesse are all down there, and they're hiding. And I think Hector's the one holding the camera. Can't remember, but whoever's holding the camera kind of pans to the right. And if it's Jesse and Marisol are standing there, whoever it is with Marisol has a flashlight and it's on their faces so they can be lit for the shot, because otherwise it'll just be
Oh.
darkness. But they're looking through this opaque kind of tarp-like thing where they can see. The only thing that allows them to see Grandma Lois coming down is if it's Grandma Lois. Maybe it's not because she's already dead, so it's not. I guess it's just a Grandma Lois looking motherfucker. But when she's coming down, the only thing that allows you to see it is the shaft of light coming down and her silhouette. So if they have light on them, she can see them. And that was it. I was just kind of like, oh, the light should have been out. It would have made for like a ruddier shot. Like you wouldn't have been able to see the fear on their faces as much. It's literally like 2 or 3 seconds. But it did make me think, you're not hiding. Maybe the point is that she does know you're there and she's just going to leave it be because she knows who you are.
That's a nitpick.
That's no, but that's a huge, that feels like a huge jump that I just wasn't able to make for some reason.
I have the most
on
tiniest,
instinct.
I don't even consider it a nitpick. It was just an observation. And I went, huh. But because I love when they've got, I forget the lady downstairs' name, but they have her book. And
Anna,
it's full of juicy stuff. Because when you see it, there's like, you see Christy and her husband's like photo in there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a photo of someone else, I think maybe like Hunter. But it goes by really quick, but they're learning all the things. And I'm like, go on, tell me more about this world.
Yes.
But when they're flipping through it, I remember they flipped through the same photo twice. And it was such a dumb thing, but I just remember thinking like, from a production standpoint, they probably said, let's make some photos and put this together. And someone used the same photo twice. And I'm like, we're just going to flip through it. It's fine. I'm like, no, my eyeball sees it.
Yeah.
Prop Master General or whatever. Like,
ultimately though,
that's the level of nitpick I have.
Yeah, but ultimately I felt like this gave the franchise kind of the jolt that it needed to stay alive. I was really excited at the end of it to see where it was going to go from here, and to see now when I watched the first one, because like I said, I watched it today and I watched marked ones yesterday. When I watched the first one now, I can't help but picture poor Hector downstairs when Katie starts screaming her head off and Mika runs down there, and then she starts, I mean, now I know what happens before she walks Mika back up the stairs. And again, it works so well just seeing her thump down the steps. I'm right back in the first movie, and I'm like, oh shit, because even before then I knew where we were. I saw her little beating table and I saw the kitchen with the peppers hanging over the sink and everything, and I was just like, oh my god, this is the first house. And then when I saw her, and I knew exactly where we were.
So technically there is a chandelier in this movie. It was the only one there wasn't, but technically there is.
There's the chandelier from the first movie. Okay, good call. Yeah.
One little thing that I want to go back and check is that in the first movie,
Yeah.
they have on the other side of their kitchen a rack of DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
Now I
It's
know,
there. It's
and
there. The
well,
shelf,
oh no,
the shelving unit with
the
all.
rack is there. But I obviously know from the first one because the first one was filmed independently. But I
Yeah.
know that they go. Do they ever go back there? They don't go to that same house again in any of the two or three. No, um,
No.
not in two. But when they're going around, the rack of DVDs are there. But at one point, the camera gets really close, and I could see Titanic on the shelf. And I'm like, well, I know it's a Paramount release, so I know the Paramount's like put a bunch of Paramount titles on there.
Yeah.
But I would love to go back and compare like
Oh, see if it's the same titles.
same titles because I guarantee you, Titanic is not on there originally.
Oh my God. I maybe I was just impressed that like on first sight I could see them and they were clearly not Blu-rays, not even
Oh yeah,
HD
they're totally DVDs.
discs. They were totally DVDs,
Yeah,
and they looked used. They looked opened, unwrapped. I mean, somebody paid attention to that
yeah.
detail. So I
So
was
that was
really, really
nice.
grateful for that.
In
And the
fact,
fact that
I did look generally the house. They did a good job recreating.
I got exactly the same feeling. And also
Yeah,
that's a big strength of the first house that I felt watching it again this first time. It was just kind of like, because I've seen them so many times, of course, each venue is going to carry weight with me. It's going to
yeah.
evoke some kind of whatever. But the first, nothing resonates with me like the first house and the way it was shot. Like there's something so memorable about that structure. And I'm sure the family that lives there now, I heard they completely redecorated it. It's
That's
all
what I've heard too.
modernized. But for them, you know, because
In
I
fact,
want to
that's
go visit.
another little thing I like about most of these movies is that I look at each of those houses, and even if I never lived in anything as nice as some of these houses,
Yeah.
I've been over to friends who did. Like for something again, it's something about the silence and the fact that these houses sound the way houses that are vaguely occupied sound. I can also relate to turning something that looks like this and not having cobwebs and not having shadows and a
Yeah.
lot of creaky, they have a different kind of thing, but bringing these newer kind of horror elements to very conventional homes
Yeah.
is quite effective to me.
Yeah, and also this great
Except,
illusion of like the seemingly most impenetrable uh fortress, you know, like this is a house where people are going to be happy, where people, you know, like this is the
we're
house you
building a
dream
home
of.
with our kid, yeah.
Yeah, this is the house
And
that
also,
everybody kind
don't
of
we
wants to
feel
have that much.
secure? We've set up cameras, so aren't we secure now?
Yeah. No,
Except for,
I went to yeah.
except for the house in the last movie, and that'll bring us to the last movie because I don't know. I stayed at
I don't
an Airbnb once that looked like that house, but again, the owner of that house made it to be an Airbnb. But I don't know who lives in that house.
neither do I. I mean, you could you could put their Christmas tree in your place now.
I
Uh, you've
certainly
got
could.
nice high
Um,
ceilings.
so let's just dive
It's
right
set
on
at
in.
Christmas.
Yeah, it's a Christmas setting movie, so that's technically fun for me just because I like anything set at Christmas. I mean,
Anything?
well, not okay. Let me rephrase that. I like when things are set at Christmas. I'm not
Okay.
saying that any movie, but in my head, I always have that list of Christmas movies that aren't.
Mhm.
And then there's like these varying degrees of like, well, how much is Christmas present in that movie? And
I mean, this is the thing. I forgot that Katie holds that crucifix so tightly that she bleeds in the first
yeah,
movie. I think that might be that, and of course, the prayers from Martine in the
right.
second movie,
A lot
and
of
the
grandmas in the Bible.
grandmother.
And then this
Yeah,
one brings it back to some Catholic
and then
shit.
this one. But this one, uh, the angel that's been passed through our family for generations, and the fact that she was burning the little girl, burning
In the
pages from the
Bible.
Bible, and that the yoga instructor slash couch surfer slash feng shui artist, whatever this girl is, like I felt really bad. Like we had Martine safeguarding the house in 2. We had Dennis doing what he could in 3, and also and then we had of course Grandma in Mark ones. Um, and we got Allie to help in there. We even got Allie to pitch in the Mark ones. And this one we have, what is her name? Um,
I don't remember anyone's name in this
I
movie.
don't either. I wrote them down for some of them.
I just know that
2013, Santa Rosa. I don't know her name, but you know who I'm talking about, the yoga instructor person thing.
yeah, she's I don't remember her name, but she's the Magicians. Like she's to me the most notable. Like after all these movies, went on to be in lots of other things.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, the little girl was Annabella in Big Little Lies, a very, very significant
oh okay.
role, Laura Dern's daughter. And she did something else. I wrote it down, but I can't remember at the moment. But
I,
she
I
works
think
quite consistently, actually.
I think the Feng Shui girl was also in another horror movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, sure. I had no interest in her. I was like, first of all, the fact that you can't even define what it is that you do. Granted, it is to a creepy guy who's totally
Hmm.
making a play for you in an obvious, not charming way. I missed Ben so much, or Hector, the charming, funny guys. We didn't get one in this movie.
No,
We
we
really could
didn't.
have used one.
The one who would be closest is the guy with the mustache who's just
The
been broken
uncle,
up with.
Uncle
Yeah,
Mike,
but
I think.
he spends so much time behind the camera.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
looking. Did I write his name? I so didn't care. I so didn't care.
yeah, I'm looking at the
Um,
character names now. Yeah, the
oh,
mom and
okay.
dad were Ryan and Emily.
I remember Ryan. I wrote that down because I had some things to say about him. But
Um,
biggest criticism for this with me was the fact that it looked more than any of the other ones. It looked like a movie.
well, on that same note, more than any of the other ones, I was very aware that this would not be being filmed, and it certainly would be being filmed by people in this way.
Yeah.
Like, this is the one where I couldn't get on. I'm just aware, like, there's a camera in the scene now.
Yeah.
We're just like, I'm not.
They just
But
gave up.
also,
And yeah.
I take no joy in like really like criticizing people's work who are just
No,
trying to work. But
no.
this was the first time I was aware, especially with the parents, that I was watching actors.
Yeah.
Hadn't had that for 5 movies, but I'm like, oh, okay, we're watching actors now. And in
Yeah.
fact, there are moments of distress where I'm not getting what I need from the dad, even though like it's on the page, it's happening in the scene, and it's just
There's no
yeah.
charming hook at the offset to kind of like draw you in. It's more like this family is living in the house that was built on the ground of the house that came before it. And somebody
Oh,
got those tapes from Crazy Anna and
oh,
left them on their doorstep for some reason.
well, no, because when the tapes arrive, again, I'm like, oh,
No, I wasn't.
and then to me, like, so we never got to see the house burn down, but when it's revealed that this is where that old house was, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I got hooked in for a lot of anytime they connect to the lore. It's when I just feel like like at first I'm so down for seeing what happens to Katie and Christy when they go up the steps from the end of 3. But then we find out
Mm.
they're getting lessons on how to psychically connect to like wow, these little girls, I mean, forget about like force pushing Christy or anything, like they've got powers
And from a
and then
man.
it's and what?
It's a coven that's run by women, and they're passing
It's
these girls over to this
this
man
dude. Yeah.
and they tell him he'll tell you teach you everything you need to know. It's like, what? How? Okay, like I get them
I get that they're bad guys,
hoarding.
but I want them to be empowered.
No, well, no, but I get them. This is the thing about plausibility. I get them hoarding like male children because hereditary again, like like their demon that they worship or whatever, their master prefers to be in male bodies. So okay, let's get some male bodies. You know what? More for us to do. Like I get that. This is the first man who's kind of like made his presence known in this coven as in a position of authority, and it's never really explained why. And again, it's not done in this mysterious way that makes me wonder who's he. It feels incredibly staged. It's like, well, why would you film this? And even if the answer is, as the script tells us later, so they'll watch it and they can have this weird timeline fuckery thing that we
Right.
do, because this is also a franchise that was built on found footage and
Right.
then found footage of people watching the footage but this time, and it feels like hype and stupidity to me, but this time there's found footage that people are watching, and then people watch themselves watching the found foot. I mean, it's
Well, at
so.
first I was actually kind of down with that, just because, one of the questions you could argue has been a question for the franchise is, we're watching this, but like, but who's watching this? And then it turns out, I'm like, oh, I guess they're watching it. Well, that's cool. And the
Yeah.
fact that it seems to be going somewhere. But if you're training the kids to reach out and find someone, but then you're using it, so the tapes have to be a part of it. Like, it seems like they can't just do it on their own, or they can to a certain degree. I always found it interesting that, like, these tapes that their grandma had, that then they had, and that Anna had to come get. Um, I understood that, like, maybe we need to get them because somebody was filming all that. But then it turns
Uh-huh.
out, but we were also filming our own stuff. Then okay, all right. But we had an intention, and they have so many sessions and so many lessons, and this was the bigger thing where, like, I can get behind a time traveling space door, but
Yeah, me too.
training the kids from such a young age, and then so much happens to these girls that they don't
Mhm.
remember any of it.
Well,
I mean,
okay, and this
again,
is,
they minds were wiped, or it was a spell, but
see,
I don't
this
know.
is where,
They become too anchored and too, like, isn't it just Christy's going to have a hunter?
well,
Cool. How much more does it know?
and Hunter's going to need to merge with this girl from the future, because she's
It was,
still from the future, because she's still a little girl and he's a full-grown man. So that's, how is that going to work?
but then it turns out it's time
And,
travel. So,
but it's time to, yeah.
she,
So
she
wait,
comes. So, but she comes
but
back
they
to,
have the
like,
same birthday. They have the same birthday. So
yeah,
reasons.
and they come back to. I don't remember even what year. Do they even? They don't say what year it is, right? They just. She goes to the door.
2013. The year the whole movie takes
No,
place
no,
in
no. But
2013.
at the end, when the mom follows
Oh, when
the
she
daughter,
follows the kid.
we just know
Yeah.
they go. Okay, so they go to the house from 3, and
Yeah.
that we know that it's when the coven has occupied it. So it's a few
Yeah.
years after that.
Yeah.
So in theory,
Before
if
the
Hunter's
fire.
there, Hunter had to come through the time portal too, because he doesn't
Yeah.
exist in that timeline.
And he had to
One,
come through the portal as a relative adult. He
it,
looks 18. His legs look 18.
see, I always just thought those were the form of Toby's legs. I never really thought it was adult Hunter.
I thought Toby was in Hunter, because she calls him. Doesn't she call him Hunter? At the
I
end, she
think
calls him
so.
Hunter. She said, "Come on,
They spend
Hunter."
this whole movie, and then they mention Hunter on the wall a little bit, and then they do
Yeah.
something at the end. But it's definitely they didn't do anything to make them supernatural legs.
No, no,
One of the
no,
things
they
when I
didn't.
was watching it, like, I had to justify a lot to get on board, and I remember thinking at the end, like, okay, or through the whole movie, we spent so much time setting up, like, it's going to be Hunter, 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 and then this movie goes, but there's this other girl, and I go, okay, all right, let's see where you're going, because there was also this other boy in L.A. So
Yeah.
so let's see. And then they even say in the beginning, like, there's this other girl out there. She's like you, and you need to bring her here. Wow, that sounds really complicated. We already
Hmm.
complicated things by saying, well, it's not just Hunter. We have to have this emissary child to go get him and bring him over.
Yeah.
But now let's complicate things even more.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
so I'm
that's
like,
what
okay,
Toby
I'm,
wants,
but I'm on
apparently.
board. I'm on board. Like, maybe the rules are you need Hunter and this girl, and this is how it happens. And we've only been staying with this family this whole time, but we don't know about this other thing. But then the fact that ultimately she's like, oh, they just needed, like, a prick of my blood.
Yeah.
Oh, that, like, the two, it could even say, like, the two born on the moon, on the eve of
Hmm.
this moon. But it's just, she's not as, but he matters because it's everything for him. And then it's just, all we need is a little drop of her blood, and that's all it takes for all this to happen.
Yeah.
Again, he is born in what, 89 or 90 or somewhere in the, did you see the alternate ending to this?
No.
There's an
I
alternate
because
ending.
because I yeah, I rented the DVD from the library first, and then I streamed it this last time to watch it, so
The
I haven't,
the
no.
the alternate ending leaves things open for more, whereas the main theatrical ending feels like the end. Like, hey, we spent 6 movies talking about Toby, and now Toby's here. The end.
Okay.
Um, but it doesn't leave me questioning things like, so Toby's around in, like, 1990. Well, then what? And then I go, okay, well, I guess there's a a door leads you through time and
He could go
space.
anywhere he wants
He can go
now.
anywhere he
Yeah.
wants. That's why I don't know.
The biggest thing for me with this, as far as its prime weakness, is it's two things. It's that the new stuff that they build upon, the new stuff that we're given, just doesn't matter to me. It doesn't go anywhere. There's nothing to kind of ensnare my interest. And then the old stuff that they employ, it doesn't feel like they chose the right things. It feels like they just kind of employed the old tropes, like, well, it's a Paranormal Activity movie, so we have to do this. Um, and I take no joy in kind of trashing this movie, but I had to wonder while it was progressing, who cared, and how, like, where is the evidence that somebody gave a shit about this progression? I really felt the absence of Christopher Landon, or of anybody who has that kind of passion for, and I guess that much control. Because that was another thing that shocked me. 4 screenwriters.
Right. 4.
4 screenwriters came up with this,
Well,
and maybe maybe that was the problem. There were too many because
there was
it's a
3.
mess.
There was 3 on part 2,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked out all right. But the fact that none of these are Christopher Landon, yeah, Landon, Michael
Landon.
Yeah, the fact that, and it's interesting because I feel like you can't always automatically judge someone who's like, oh, they didn't write the last one, so that's why it sucks. Because I feel like, yeah, again, you have to care. Like if someone came up to you and me, I'm not saying we're
Mm-hmm.
brilliant writers, but like, came up to you and me and said like, well, Christopher Landon's done. Do you want to write the next one? At least we have like an invested interest, and we know like maybe what Landon wants
Yeah.
to avoid, where it could go. But what we wouldn't do is cook up this other girl and this priest who's training them psychically, and I don't how this is the direction we want to go to, unless it was one of those cases like, well, Katie's not coming back this time. Oh,
Maybe.
okay. Like if there are outstanding reasons, but
Well, this was another one that was also, I wasn't around for all the stuff, the way they promoted it and everything like that.
oh, this time you will see the activity.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I
You're going
did.
to
I
see
saw it.
Toby,
I saw it
and
in
it's supposed
3D.
to, and it was supposed to tie them all together.
So
That's
they
the way they were
claimed.
promoting it.
Yeah.
So they claimed, and all it
Yeah.
did, the ways it did, I was just kind of like, so what? And the ways that it didn't, I was like, and even the things that it introduced that were new that just kind of opened, I'm like, well, you've just created more questions, and
Yeah,
questions
I
I
know a lot
barely
of
care about getting the answers to.
I know a lot of people who were disappointed that this seemed to throw away a lot of the Katie Christie stuff from 3 and 4 and totally negated anything that 5 brought up. And I wouldn't go that far. I just always added that, like, no, you just have to incorporate new lore to the old. But that was just me justifying it after initially seeing it. Just kind of like, you leave episode 1 for the first time in 1999 and you're like, I saw lightsabers. It was great.
Right.
And then you slowly realize, oh yeah, Jar Jar stepped in poo and said, icky, icky goo. Maybe this isn't.
Yeah.
And the high wears off of like, I'm gonna stop trying to justify the things that, nah, it doesn't totally work.
Well, I'll
There
also,
are little things that I enjoy.
oh,
I
really?
You may not agree with me, but I actually like, I'm okay with the oily goo.
Oh,
I'm okay with it.
okay.
I like that, as his power grows, it creates more form. And I actually genuinely was invested in the scene where the 2 guys are at home and it's like coming at them in the kitchen and they're hiding behind the island. When they like look around the corner and then it's like, I was like, oh my, like if I was in the kitchen and this giant oily thing was stomping around, like I wouldn't, especially if I can't see it and the other guy can. That scene, and they got me in that scene. So
Okay.
there's something nice. I thought the little girl, as the story progressed, like she creeped me out towards the end. She had a focus, especially when she's really being like commanded, and the adults are all talking to her. Like her resistance to them eventually unsettled me.
Okay.
Another little thing I liked is that for all the big effects that they kind of added to this, and maybe not by like your Marvel Studio standards, but for this franchise's standards, the big effects, they still had simple little gags too. Like there'd be like a shot of the kid's bedroom, and then we just see her feet like at the top of the frame. And I'm like, well, that's still creeping me out. It's still Toby playing with a kid. She should be
Mhm.
floating up there. That's unnatural. At least you can still do some things without having a giant CG oil monster go. Woof, woof.
I've
Um,
still yet to see Toby connecting with a child in a way that scares me more than the prospect in my mind of child in the bed, something's at the foot of the bed, it sees them, they can hear it breathing, it's whispering their name. Everything that Katie said happened to her as a little girl in the first movie is still scarier than
it,
anything I've seen him infringe on any child
and that's also a nice
in these
compliment to the
movies.
first movie. I'm
Yeah.
in a weird, messed up way. I'm almost kind of glad that the movies didn't ever show that because I don't think it would ever be as creepy to me as the way it plays out in my head.
Well, because again, I'll come back to,
So, I
and
mean,
I'll tie this all back to 6. But in 3, because I love the cast so much, I feel like you have this family that I am just waiting to watch torn apart. I'm waiting for you to break my heart the way my heart was broken in the marked ones, for loss, for people actually experiencing real turmoil and dealing with crises the way people do. So that's enough of a hook for me. The thing about this one, because it also, with the stuff with Katie and Christy and the footage of them as they're being raised and kind of molded by this coven, it just starts detracting more and more, or getting off the track more and more of what we had set up, as tentatively as it was, for these girls and what their lives have been. Because I had forgotten the first movie that Katie said, this didn't just happen when I was a little girl. Every
right.
period of a few years or so, it starts to happen again, and then it'll stop. And it just started happening again, and I don't really understand why. And
I
that's,
honestly, after three, I imagined we were going to get a fourth one with them, like in 1992 or 1993, and we are going to keep going. I was really surprised that we didn't get that. Not
yeah,
surprised,
I
but
mean,
I just thought there was more lore to explore, and we hadn't burned down the house yet. And I just
right.
thought, and I think there's even tapes that I think show like Katie 1992, if I'm not mistaken, like when you see the
You
bust.
might be right. You might, that sounds right. Yeah. But I mean, but the fact that also, because I'm not as much of a fan of the climax of 3 as you are. And this is probably my problem with 6, with Ghost Dimension. Not the only one, but because I don't think people do this enough when they criticize horror movies. Sometimes I think it's your problem and not the movies.
Mhm.
I think my problem is because I'm not as on board with the climax from 3 and them kind of like being shaped by this coven and everything like that. I like it more. They went through a traumatic thing, and it was always this unanswered question for them. Because why, if you're going to brainwash them and make them fuck up with their memories while you're training them, while you're basically molding them to be servants for this Toby thing, why would you give them like residual fear of it as they're moving into adulthood? Does that make
I
sense?
was just chalked up as like that's you can't get rid of it entirely. You can get rid of you can. I mean, there's a certain level that they could. Yeah, I mean, it's something I have to justify.
Okay. It
But
doesn't. It's not worth
no,
justifying enough for me, because I liked the original thing that scared me too
no, me
much.
too. I just, but just to defend the third act, it's not even so much the story beats as just going like when he's going around the house, and we've already kind of seen
Hmm.
the house, but
Yeah.
now the paintings are down, and
Hmm.
I just like the same way when it says like night three, and you're like, oh shit. When I
Yeah.
see that room and there's a pentagram, and it's like laid out on the table, like this is what's happening. I'm like, you need to get out of this house right now. And I found that very effective, even though I did think the dad getting snapped in half and then like, oh, we're going upstairs. I'm like, oh, we're ending. Oh,
Yeah.
darn, because we're
Yeah.
getting interesting. But leave him wanting more. But
Yeah.
also, I often wondered. I know we're not talking about six anymore, but I often wonder when she says, because if you end up like our mother, well, mom gets thrown down the stairs, so she's dead. Is that what she's referring to? Because her mom was never like acting crazy unless the witches made their memories think that something was off with her mom. Or this is a new retcon that I have in my head. What if her mom got thrown down the stairs but isn't dead?
Yeah.
And
There's
never
that.
maybe she's just laying there hurt, and
Mhm.
maybe things after that don't go well. Or the third thing is
Oh.
the third option is that they're raised by their grandma, which in theory they are. The
Uh-huh.
coven is staying in that house for a few more years, training them. I think the grandma, like they refer to her as grandma, whatever, but like she essentially raises them, and I'm sure she told them about your mother. So that's why they have this perception
Hmm.
of her mom. But I just remember when the mom died in 3, I was like, wait, I was really curious about what you said about her in 2, and I feel like I'm not getting a payoff for that. Oh
She didn't
well.
seem like she'd be on board for the whole coven thing. She didn't
Right.
seem like she knew about it, so maybe Lois had no problem sacrificing her. But
I think the last thing I'll say about
yeah.
the uh, the ghost dimension is
Mhm.
unlike you, I liked Feng Shui, the girl from the Magicians,
Okay.
more than like I like the parents. I really don't believe that they're parents. I don't believe that the mom is like her mom. Um, but also not only I'm not hip to the idea of the priest guy, but I remember the second he showed up on screen, I'm like, oh, that dude, I've seen him on stuff.
Oh, really?
And that was the first time I've ever had that reaction in this
Oh.
whole franchise. And that really pulled me out because that dude
Oh, I've had that with a
works.
few people. I've had that
That
with a few
say apparently you
actors.
have, I haven't. So I feel like that was the first time this franchise did that. So I remember being let down because
Oh,
I'm like, oh, you got a face. I've
yeah.
seen him. He shows up. He's usually like the one. He shows up on a lot of episodes of shows, but he's been in things.
The guy who trains them, the
Yeah,
guy in the coven who trains them, he's been in a bunch of things. Yeah, yeah. He's
yeah. And I instantly just recognize his face from stuff, and it just
yeah.
pulled me out. Um, Also, they do. They set up that the beast. The little girl's drawing it, and then they even see like the drawing. Like they see.
Yeah.
They
The
find a
beast with
bunch
all
of.
the
They
eyes.
find a bunch of stuff, and there's like the image, and then when they get it in the portal, the big
Mm-hmm.
CGI fire portal, it doesn't look like that.
No.
And I'm like, well, is that demon in service of a greater demon? Because I just the language of the movie taught me to anticipate this, and
Yeah.
even its silhouette leading up to it. I don't know. Um,
Well, I mean,
ooh,
the whole design of any form Toby takes in this movie, I'm not on board with. But I will say one thing that I did appreciate to
ooh,
end on kind of actually two things I appreciated.
go
I
on.
liked I liked the priest they called in to talk to this girl. I thought he was sweet. He was the first person I was kind of rooting for because I mean, you're the thing about your feng shui girl. The thing that checked me out with her is after the Bible pages are burned and the mom is telling her about it, she's kind of recounting about it. What does she say to the mom? She's like, maybe she was just playing a game. She doesn't know what it is. And I'm like, okay, this girl's what, like 7 or 8 years old? When I was 7 or 8 years old, I knew what a Bible was. And I knew that if I tore pages out of it, I was going to be in trouble. And I wasn't raised in an overtly religious household. And it seems like they are,
I'd believe she was 6, so shut up.
6-year-olds. Okay, when you
I'm
were
just
six
kidding.
year olds, you didn't know not to tear pages out of the Bible and burn them. And if
Right.
you did, would anybody defend it by going like, it's a game? He doesn't know what it is. So that's what made me sever me on her. Sorry, I was supposed to be saying good things. I liked the
Yeah.
priest. I thought he was sweet, and I felt bad that he got bit.
Oh yeah. And the
and,
bite's a good moment.
and the fact that I like the fact that he did the blessing to the bear first to kind of like make
Uh-huh.
her.
And he
I felt
asks, like,
myself
can I
being.
put this water? Like I love the way he worded it.
Can I give him a bath? He looks really, really hot. Could I just give him some water to cool him off, and then maybe I'll just do some free. I mean, it was very
Mm-hmm.
easy. For the first time, I felt like the movie took my hand and was leading me. And then the other thing that I liked for the set dresser or whoever's behind production design here, we've had a lot of tents up until now, but here we got a tent. It's the first tent with a window in it, and the window is a circle. So it is a triangle with a
Oh,
circle in the middle. And I was just kind of like, oh, I see what you did. Like, okay.
that's
So
cool.
I like that. I thought that was a nice little touch. That was it.
Oh, I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one more nice little touch, and
Okay,
that
go for
is
it.
that when what's his nuts mustache guy first shows up to the house, he's like,
Yes.
"Geez, I think this isn't like big enough, or is this a rental?" But like he's commenting to his buddy or brother, I don't even know,
I
about
don't
like, God
know.
damn, your house is big. Because like
Yeah.
at least there's someone a little more human and relatable. Because that's how I feel, and a lot of You see a lot of Hollywood movies where the house is exceptionally big, and it's
Yeah.
just an accepted thing. Like you look at Home, there's a lot of jokes about Home Alone, and like, what did Kevin's dad do?
Yeah.
He can afford that house and to fly all these people to France.
Yeah.
And this was the first time where I'm like, man, this house is huge. And then the character goes, God damn, this house is huge. I'm like, okay, at least we're acknowledging.
Okay. Cool. I don't share your resignation. That it resonates with you, I'm grateful for that.
Oh,
I'm glad you get that because it.
before we read our lists, there's one
Yes.
little thing that escaped me that I meant to mention earlier, and I would like to, we were talking about the other boy, Robbie or whoever, coming over, and like how he has to
Oh.
introduce him to Hunter, because then Hunter has to make his choice, and you talked about
Yeah.
choice in general.
Yeah.
And one of the little things that, even though I like that idea, I don't want to say it gets negated, but he comes over and he's introducing Hunter to Toby, and it's something grows. And like, again, I always thought the emissary sent for him to come back, to choose to come back. But after
Mhm.
all that, he's in a bathtub, and then he just gets pulled into the bathtub, and then he eventually comes back up, and he's just like, well, I'm going to go over. It almost felt like, well, do you even need to send the other boy over, or can you just yank him under a tub?
Exactly. Like, does it have to be
I feel at
consensual,
that
and
point
how
there
much of
is
that
no
is the real
choice.
boy? Like, yeah.
The only justification, again, and I hate when you have to make the justifications, is that he has to be comfortable. He has to reach a point where he would almost choose to like let Toby be this close to him, and that's when I can drown you. But that's me doing the work,
And yeah.
as
See, I
opposed
think
to
that's the difference between that forgiveness thing for me. When I feel like I have to do it,
Mhm.
and I mean like I have to, like wait, what? And the realization, like the rationale of it, isn't worth it. Because sometimes I do go like,
Right.
wait,
Well,
what
and
the
if
fuck
there's
was
enough
that? And
other
then
good going on to justify it, I'll,
sure.
you
Oh
know.
no, but I mean, even like sometimes if I don't get something, I'm not that bright. Even if I don't get something, and shut up. If I don't get something, and then I think about it for a while because it it bothers me. I'm just kind of like, but it doesn't feel like it was nothing. Well, what was it? And then all of a sudden it'll just aha, and I'll be like, oh, yeah. I have to feel it. I have to have some kind of glorious, or at least
Mhm.
gratifying experience. That's why with movies that I like, when I connect the dots and whatnot, I'm compelled because I'm just kind of like, oh, I wonder what that was, and that was probably no, because of this tiny moment that told me everything I needed to know about the character, and then the character did this, and that's why anything that feels like, even if it's not true, if I can have faith that the filmmaker is ushering me along, and that the entire creative team is at least trying to build something for me to play with like that, because these are movies. Let's have fun with them. These discussions, these breakdowns that we're doing are fun, for me, and for for anybody who's still watching, thank you. But when it starts to feel like it is a chore, and like I'm doing the work the writer should have done, it's largely subjective. It largely has to do with the way I receive the movie, and some of these I receive more enthusiastically than
Mhm.
others. That
Well,
said,
let's rank our enthusiasm.
all
So
right, I'll go first.
I think it's been about 2.5 hours. So
What?
yeah, yeah. Look at that face, everybody.
Shit. We tried so hard.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got.
Hey, we spent over 4 hours on 8 Chucky movies.
Yeah,
So
like a
two and
half
a half
hour
on
per
six
movie.
is
Yeah.
it's a little better if you cut the ratio down.
And now we're going to do the ranking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we talked enough about the movies. I expect the
yeah,
ranking.
yeah. Okay, so 6 for me. Probably obvious to everybody. Ghost
Yeah,
Dimension.
Ghost
Yeah.
Dimension here.
Okay.
Don't
5. 5 for me. Paranormal Activity 4.
You're not gonna like mine. It's marked ones.
Oh, that was so much louder than I meant it to be. But
That's all
oh,
right.
the pain that just caused me.
Just it's I'm I
It's
I,
it's
I
subjective. It's art. It's
I'm
whatever.
just never scared in it, and I really do. Like there's still beats in 4 that creep me out. Not much creeps me out in 5.
And I'm not even the exact opposite. I mean, I'm like 4 does not scare me. And the marked ones,
Well,
I am
4
tense
doesn't
the
do much.
whole
No.
fucking time. Okay, so our 5s, those were our 5s. My 4, Paranormal Activity 3.
Mm.
Just
I
because the scares are legit, I love it, and then the holes that I have to fill in, and the fact that I don't feel like I'm getting the sequel I wanted. That's it. But I like it. I wish it were different. That's why.
I understand. Yeah, because I like 3 more than you. I got 4
Yeah.
at 4.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
just because there's stuff that doesn't work in 4,
Yeah.
and the stuff that works in 5 doesn't overcome the fact that I'm never scared. Whereas there's little things in 4 that at least I don't know. I just enjoy it a little more. At least I jump a few times.
Right. Number 3 is Paranormal Activity 2.
Me too.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Um,
Yeah, it doesn't. We already said it. Like,
this
it doesn't
actually
scare me.
this actually moved down for me.
Oh, really?
If you asked me a few months ago, it would have been higher up.
See, it moved up for me. I thought I liked it less, and then when I
And I
rewatched it,
still like it, but
yeah, me too. No, no, and this isn't about like it's not my number one, so I hate it.
right.
Like, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're
No,
not babies.
I love this whole franchise.
Yeah,
I own the ghost dimension. Like, come on.
I love 4/6 of it. Uh,
So yeah, we each have 2 at 3.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the marked ones is my number 2.
Yeah.
The
So
marked one, it's just too
our
good.
2 and 5s, because
Really?
I've got number 3 up at number 2, and you've
Oh,
got 3 really low.
I've got 3 at 4.
Oh,
I've
okay.
got 3 at 4. My number
Okay.
5 is 4. See,
Okay.
now this is getting who's on first?
There
Third
we go. Yeah.
base.
No.
But
Okay. But
yeah,
I know why you like marked ones. We spent plenty of time talking about it,
we did. I'm sorry.
and I
Maybe
respond.
that's what ran us run over.
There's I like those girls. I like the parents. I love the camera doing this,
Mm-hmm.
and then the sheet, and then the sheet drops. I
Mm-hmm.
gasped when that happened.
Yeah, and I told
Gasped.
you for this we needed a mascot for Paranormal Activity.
Yeah,
Like
I
we had
didn't want
Chucky in the
that.
background. I told you put a sheet over Chucky, and you didn't
No,
wanna.
I don't wanna. That no. So yeah, no.
That's
There's a
awesome.
lot about 3 that I like, and I love
Yeah,
Randy. I love
and yeah,
Randy.
I love
So
Randy too. Randy, and that scene. Those are the strongest things for me. And there are other
yeah.
strong things in it too.
Obviously,
But
number 1.
obviously, number 1 is the first one,
Yeah.
Paranormal Activity. I mean, I wondered after seeing Mark ones yesterday and it having the same impact because you see something once, you don't know,
Oh, but
how you
the
feel about it.
impact
I
is
knew I
still
wanted to
there.
own it. I knew I wanted to own it. And then I watched it yesterday and I was like, shit, I really like this one. I wonder if because I love the first one. I really do. I've loved it for a long time, but I also hadn't seen it in a while. So it's like, because I just always knew it's my number 1. So I rewatched it today and it almost made me sick. The turmoil that Katie is at risk. I'm right there with her. She almost made me, I welled up when she cried twice.
Mhm.
I was just there and I could feel my body contorting in that way when you're just empathizing so hard with somebody because none of this is her fault. And
I
it
didn't
just
well
killed
up,
me.
but I connected to it more than I ever did in the previous viewings. Maybe it's just
Yeah.
something having to do with age, but I was definitely on her journey a lot more and feeling her frustrations and relating or imagining to relating to the fear of what's happening, and
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I didn't get when I was 29,
Mm-hmm.
28,
Mm-hmm.
just about to turn, yeah, it's 28 still.
Okay. Yeah,
No, but
it's
everything about
like,
that movie, the simplicity of
yeah.
it, the
Mm-hmm.
premise, it's everything
They
that we
do
raved about.
so much with so little,
So little.
and the special effects, except for her face at the end, which it's over by then. I don't care. I'm scared. I'm out.
Oh, the first time I
Um,
saw it, I couldn't look. I was too
oh,
nervous
really?
because before it, she's got
Yeah.
like the intent is there, So I
Yeah.
had to look away. So I even had to ask, like, so what happened at the end? Because I looked away. And they're like, oh, her
Oh,
face
from
morphs.
and see
And I
the thing
never
that
do that.
freaked. Yeah.
And it's
No,
all
the thing.
her. It's not the CGI effect. It's
No,
her
no, no, no,
face. It's her
no.
performance
Just
before
her
it.
dropping down and smelling him like an animal at the end.
Hmm.
Oh God, I'm gonna scare myself. But I just like, I mean, that's the only, but I mean, that's the only point where even the CGI or the you know the filmmaking is
Hmm.
kind of apparent. Where I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm watching a horror movie. The rest of the time, I know I'm not actually watching found footage. I'm watching like this indie film. But my God, if it's like not a well-made indie film that just takes me on the ride, and I think this whole franchise gets a bad rap, actually. I think I don't
There's not enough people for me. The reactions would have been the way they have been. That like, there's not a lot of people for me to geek out about it the way I could about Nightmare movies or Friday the 13th movies or
yeah,
Chucky movies.
yeah,
But at the time of their release, I remember people were still on board with two, people were still on board with three, and then it just sort of
yes.
tapered away.
Yeah. Well, three was, oh, I didn't tell you this. Three, when I was in the theater, was there the night before it opened. It was a preview, and I was working near a movie theater. So, and I didn't want to go in traffic to go home. So I had some dinner and I went over and I watched the movie. And I sat down and it wasn't packed. There were about three empty seats to my left, and there was this big guy, looked like a gorilla, you know, like like we and the kind of gorilla, like a nightclubbing gorilla, like the kind of guy who, you know, he's only here to do something on Friday. Oh no, well, not Thursday night, whatever. You know, it's going to be the weekend almost, and he's just all tatted up. His arms are like beefsteaks, and he's got all the food in the world. He's just eating.
Okay.
He's barely watching, and then he's taking out his phone. It's going. He doesn't. It's not dim, and I was just kind of like, oh, because the second movie, I remember it was still, I felt like I was surrounded by horror fans. So three was like when it broke through. Because I don't even know the numbers. I don't know if three was the most financially successful or anything, but it feels like it penetrated into the mainstream, and all of a sudden, people who aren't even horror fans are going to see this movie. And I just remember he had a glare on his phone, and it wasn't so bad during the daylight scenes because there's a glare there too. But at night, boom, you want to be scared. It's dark. And I remember at one point, I let it go. I think I give people three strikes usually in movie theaters. And I just said to him, excuse me, that's really distracting. Could you please turn your phone off? And all I got in response was kind of exactly what you'd expect. He just goes, yeah, well, fuck. And then he just shown his phone, sorry, just shown his phone
Do you
in
say
my
yeah, what
direction.
for? Or
No,
yeah,
yeah, well, fuck is
fuck?
what he
Okay.
said. But he didn't say it as articulately as I just did. Like, yeah, well, fuck. And then just shown the phone in my direction, like, yeah, take that, you know, kind of thing. And then I didn't have a reaction because I'm like, this
I've
guy's like three
never had
times
that
my
before.
size. No, and this guy's like three times my size. I'm like, I'm not going to start some shit. It's not worth it. But I really wish I had magical powers right now so I could just. and, and then the rest of the movie, I think I just, you know, like did this anytime his phone came out, and it was fine. And that's what I do to this day when people do distracting shit because people are awful.
I tend
Anyway,
to, I tend to usually speak up.
I do too. No, but I
Yeah.
mean, like, so, but then if you speak up and nothing happens, it's like,
Yeah.
I paid money to see this,
Oh,
not to
you
argue with this person or
you'll
get
get
up
a
and
lot
leave
of
and
this from
report
me though.
them.
Like after I've talked,
Yeah, we've got the angry eyebrows too. Like when
yeah,
we
I
look
can't help it.
intensely at people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, this wasn't going to work on that guy. So that's another memory I carry about this franchise with me. So, but I think Gorillas notwithstanding,
Yeah,
uh,
but you know, you're right though.
it's a solid franchise.
There isn't enough love. Yeah, it's a very solid franchise.
Yeah.
And when something becomes part of the cultural zeitgeist and then it gets diluted to a certain degree, people forget how I think how smart as far as the structure and just the quality of the scares are, especially in those first few movies.
Hmm.
Um, and also just it's funny how a wide shot of almost nothing happening,
Yeah.
but the anticipation will just get me. All you have to do is say, "Oh, well, it's night 5," and I'm looking at a big wide shot of a room, and I'm like, "Oh shit, oh shit." But then all it takes is, "Oh, see that thing in the corner? gonna do this now. I'm like, oh god, and that's impressive. And but it's a flavor, and that flavor's not everyone's cup of tea. And I understand people are like, stupid. You're just supposed to. It's just a room and a things boy. That's not scary. Cool to you. That's not
Yeah.
scary. To me, I think it works, and I'm glad it works for you too.
I'm glad it works for me, whether I'm with an audience or whether I'm alone. Like the ones that I like the most, I can watch and they still get to me. Um, I'm wondering how much of a hard time I'm going to have getting to sleep tonight, but
And I'm wondering, because Paramount announced they're bringing it back,
yeah,
and
is it
Christopher Landon. I want to say
Landon? Think
Landon. Michael
Calarusian.
Landon's done. He's coming. Well, the news first broke a few months ago that he's coming back to write it.
Yeah.
And then he got on Twitter and was like, let me clarify, everyone. He's like, I'm not writing this movie. He's like, I am coming in as a producer. I'm going to help break the story in a
Oh,
story by supervisor kind of way. But he's like, I am not the
right.
screenwriter for this. I am just helping. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, here's hoping, because I think the pitch was it was supposed to be, I think, like a Paranormal Activity 7 and not necessarily a reboot.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to come out actually over a month ago when I was doing my initial list. I saw a listing for it on IMDb and a tentative date of, I can't remember if it was 2021 or 2022.
2021.
Okay,
Because it was
2021.
announced in 2019.
Okay.
And it's one of those
I
things like,
looked
we're not
for
going
it
to get to it for a
again.
while because Christopher Landon's doing another movie. And then, like, eventually, it was supposed to come out, I think, in early next year.
Right. And well, also now
Now,
it's
who the hell
pulled
knows?
because now nobody's filming anything except for, like stuff like this.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think they're going to, I mean, that'd be an interesting paranormal activity to be happening during
They made a fourth movie where
COVID-19.
people are on computers. You could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely doable. It's just about like how do you create the scares and make them not all like post, like how can
Yeah.
you do some practical shit that's going to be scary? But like I'd actually I'd be down for that. But yeah, but I looked on IMDb. I could look under Christopher Landon's name and see if there's a link under his directed thing, but it didn't come up. It came up before when I would just type Paranormal Activity and get all the Paranormal Activities suggested. It didn't do that this time, so I don't know if it's been pulled just because it's still in development and now
Yeah.
nothing's in development. So,
So, and you know
so it may
what
still be
he
a
went
while.
on to do, right?
Yes, I do. Happy Death Day and
Yeah.
Happy
And Happy
Death Day
Death Day
to
too. I'm a
you.
big fan of this dude.
Yeah, yeah. I've been a fan for
And
a long
then,
time.
have you heard about what his next movie is?
No.
It's his take on like the body swap kind of comedy,
Okay.
except you're body swapping with a serial killer.
Oh,
So it's still like in the horror vein, but like I don't know if it's going to be like 18
yeah,
again, where like it's like an old man and like an 18-year-old boy, or if it's going to be like a boy and a girl, but just
yeah.
presumably someone who's not a murderer is now in the
My
body of a
mind,
murderer, and now a
my
murderer
mind
is in your
immediately
prison.
went to like Rob Schneider and the Hot Chick,
Yeah,
like a sequel to that or a reboot of that by Christopher Landon. I would watch it. I would totally watch it. But no, I've been a fan since even before he was on the cover of a magazine that I used to read. Remember those? Right after I came out, it was The Advocate because he's gay too.
oh, I didn't know that.
And yeah, and he was just this pretty face on the cover. I was like, who's that? And I read the article, and he was this was probably like 99 or 2000, and he was just really, really articulate and really um, smart as far as his sense of himself. Like
Hmm.
he talked about like doors closing to him because of him being who he is. If that's the case, then those are doors that lead to places he doesn't want to go. And I think I was like 19 when I read that. I had just come out the year before, so that meant a lot. I
Interesting
was
that
just kind of
doors
like,
didn't open for him because his dad's famous
well, people
and
were
beloved.
really, because he's so handsome and because his dad is so beloved, a lot of people were waiting for him to act, and he just didn't have any interest. I think
Oh,
he even said in the old article, I should have reread it, but if I remember correctly, he even attempted acting, and he's not an actor in his own estimation. He
hey, at
doesn't.
least he knows.
Yeah, no, that's better than the alternative.
Um,
Because instead he's working on these films that we can be really, really grateful he's there a part of. Even if I have notes, like
yeah.
it doesn't mean I don't love the thing. I don't love movies because they're perfect. I don't love people because they're
He carried
perfect.
on the mythology in an interesting enough way that I really had a good time, even if, when you watch the first one, you could nitpick about Christy or Katie and where the demon was, who was talking to who or whatever.
Sure.
But like in other person's hands, we might not have had such a good run for some of the next sequels under his guidance. So yay for him.
Mm-hmm. He will
And
always have written the marked ones for me, in my estimation.
yeah,
I'll just be like, you wrote and directed the marked ones. That's enough for me for life.
and hey man,
Like,
I love Happy Death Day, and
yeah.
I think has a really for something that didn't need a sequel, and I was very much against the sequel. He showed up and made a sequel that was really fun, really worth the damn. I love the second one.
It was engaging for sure. I was interested, and
He's
I
good
really
at
liked the first one, and I liked a lot of things about the second one.
he's pretty good at finding like, oh, we're gonna do more. He's good at finding the thing that makes it worth doing more of.
Yeah.
So good for him. Um, so yeah, I think that should be that.
Okay.
We praised Landon, and oh, okay. One last thing, and then we'll go. You have to give props to Oren Peli for starting this whole thing.
Oh yes,
I
absolutely.
mean,
Oh my
and
God.
that is a grand slam out of the gate. Even if you didn't know it had no budget,
Mm-hmm.
really smart choices from someone. Uh, I mean, enough so that your copy of it ends up in Spielberg's hands, and Spielberg goes, "Oh, there's something here.
Yeah. And also,
There's
you
something here."
created a movement. You create a movement for people to demand that it come to your town. This small, like, little indie
Oh yeah,
flick, like there was a whole. I wasn't a part of that either. I saw this movie, the first movie I saw out of the theaters after the fact, when people were there was just a buzz around it. Like, this is the new, like, weird,
yeah,
movie that everybody's talking about. Have you seen it? And in light of what horror had been up until then, and even like horror esque
yeah.
stuff, there was a lot of violence, and there was a lot of um I don't know, I'll just say violence.
Shock,
And sometimes
jump
exploitation,
scares.
I
Yeah,
thought.
and
And
this
sometimes
was
it worked and
something.
sometimes it didn't, but this was like, I was
Dare I
like, oh,
say,
I
old
hope
fashioned?
this. And I felt like, I hope this is the future also of horror, and in its way it was.
And that's why it kind of
um
was. Because
because
then
there
we
are
got a lot of
still, yeah,
low budget, mid budget. Even if they
yeah,
weren't in a house with something, I mean, I think we had like Unfriended, which looks kind of like this, but we had, oh no, you could spend like $1 million and
yeah.
a couple
Or even
houses.
movies that demand something of your attention span, that have that slow
Oh
burn like
yeah.
the first one did. There's a lot of
Um,
movies. Yeah.
I honestly, Insidious came out, I think the year after this,
Hmm.
and Oren Peli was a producer on it,
Mm.
and
Oh, I remember them advertising that. Yeah.
I remember, I like James Wan, I like
Yeah.
Saw, and I eventually saw Dead Silence. But there's one thing. This isn't a critique, but James Wan had his films had a lot of energy, and we're gonna whip
Yeah.
the camera around a thing, and we're gonna shake the
Yes.
thing, and everything's gonna have nifty trickery, all the fun editing tricks, and the camera technique. And then I went into Insidious not expecting much, but I knew that Oren Peli produced it, and I was really
Yeah.
impressed that Oren. I personally think this is Oren Peli's effect as a producer. How quiet that movie is. And it was to me that was the first time I saw a James Wan movie that was calm. And
Mm.
that there's scenes when they're moving into the house, and again, it's I get older and I forget names. I forget everyone's names, but the mom in that movie,
Rose Byrne.
Rose Byrne, is just like unpacking some boxes, or she's just at home and the kids. And I just remember thinking, this feels and sounds like Paranormal Activity. I know it's not
Yeah.
found footage, but like we're in a house. It's very modest. And again, I didn't. This is when I started to learn the name Jason Blum and
Mm.
his structure of houses and spending this much, and
Yeah.
we're going to fill it all in like one house.
Big
Um,
houses with a staircase. Yeah. A lot of
yeah.
space. A lot of space
Uh,
to shoot in, though.
so when you're saying that we saw its effect, I don't even think we mean on low budget found footage horror movies, but I mean, at least for the first few years, I found its effect even in you know Insidious type movies.
Well, and on what horror is, I mean, there are still movies coming out these last few years. There have been really, really big hit movies that I talk to people who claim to be horror fans, and it doesn't scare them, and it moves too slow for them, and they just say it was bad. It wasn't scary. And then there are other people, diehard horror fans, who are like, this is what I mean. I love a lot of things. I mean, one thing we can love as horror fans is our subgenres and
Mm-hmm.
our genres within our subgenres, and appreciate that not every single movie is the same. That's kind of the
Right.
glory of it.
And there's some
But
people that they like their certain subgenres, and to them that's what horror is, and this doesn't
yeah,
work for them, and
yeah.
it
But
works
then
for
then
me.
there are these people who I talk to who are so grateful that movies like Paranormal Activity and also just like other slower burn movies like The Babadook and Hereditary and The Witch. And there are people who think they're not scary and that they're bad. And then there are people who feel the way I do
I
and
think they're
feel,
great and they're terrifying.
yes, yes. Um,
Those are
and
three of some of the best horror movies I've seen in the last 10 years.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, those are the ones I own.
And almost I know we're trying to wrap up here, but one thing I noticed is that it felt like almost like I forget what year was which, but one year we had The Babadook, and then the
Hmm.
next year I think we had It Follows, and then the next year we had
Mm,
Hereditary, no, The Witch. But it felt like
yeah.
every year there was like one,
Yeah.
and it was usually like released by A24 or like Annapurna
Right.
or something. But
It
they,
Comes at Night was another one.
yeah, but it feels like every year
Yeah.
there's one like, yeah. So God bless them.
Hmm.
Yeah, influence on the world of movies. Yay, yay.
Thank you, Paranormal
Let's get the
Activity.
fudge out of here.
All
I'd
right.
love to see. I bet this video ends up being 3 hours.
Thanks.
So
Sorry, we
thank
tried.
you for watching. Or let me
Yes,
rephrase that. Thank you for watching all the way till the end.
absolutely. If
If
you're
you
hearing
did.
this, we appreciate you so much. And if you
Yes.
aren't, we appreciate you too.
Yeah, we do.
But sitting with
But
this,
especially
thank
if you're
you.
staying at home and this is what you're listening to on like the treadmill or jogging or just laying staring into the abyss wondering what's
Yeah,
going to happen to all of us. Cool. Thank you for listening and watching.
absolutely. Let us know what else you want to hear.
Yeah,
Bye.
that. Bye.